Welcome to Flat Earth Debate, Uncut and After Show. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are premiering. There's also a PayPal, Patreon, and crypto link in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreon, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon, so a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Guns of Navarone, RMP, Troy Shuka, Bo Snail, Justin Duso, Joseph Pizarro, Samson, Maris, Hairy Blade, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Lost Cat FE, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Mike, Muted, Dick Earth Skeptic, NA Literalist, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Rob H, Nathan Thompson, The Real Gabster, Windrider, Liam Nedrick, Owen Jennisons, Abraham Mohammed, Dave Rakia Gafford, Naibai, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic 936, Life is Short, Fireball X, Texas Mike, Edwin Johnson, Kirsten Smith, Alexander Main, David Wayne Foster, and Dank. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I'm going to raise the mic on whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their conversation while I set it for today's live show.
I got to give you credit for that, but I kind of felt bad for him.
He didn't have to come. Nobody asked. Well, Nathan Thompson asked him to come. Blame Nathan Thompson.
Yeah, I wish you would have hammered him more.
It doesn't. I said this 4 or 5 times in the shows following that. It doesn't matter who you are. If you come here and you present your case with the fundamentalist religious belief, it's going to get ripped to shreds. It doesn't matter who you are. You're like, oh, but it's Witzy. I feel bad for him. Oh. Well, he didn't. No, but I didn't twist his arm to come here, did I?
No, he came in fully confident to defend his position. Then he sort of flipped when once Rumpus was calling his name and saying Richard is right, then he quickly tried to retract from it.
That's a dirty mirror he held up, isn't it?
Gotta let that go. What's that?
Again, John?
I said that was a dirty mirror that Rumpus held up, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, you know, that you got to hand it to Rumpus. He knows which angle to exploit, right?
Morning.
Hey, Redman.
How y'all doing today?
Mighty fine. Pretty good.
How was your holiday?
Nice. You all have a nice Christmas?
Yeah, I stepped on a Lego.
Stepped on a Lego. Yeah, that sounds familiar.
I hate that.
Thank God I don't deal with little toys anymore.
Yeah, my 5-year-old.
Paying for on the pocket.
Like to die.
My kids are expensive. One kid's into music, the other one's into guns, and the little guy's into video games. Well, they're all into the video games, so my Christmases are very expensive.
Okay, Neil. I don't know what to say to that.
You all know what to say when you got to shell out almost $800 for a video game.
No,
Over $1,000 for a bass guitar. When your kids reach that age, you'll see.
the $1,000 for a bass guitar I can get behind, because there's a good chance, well, not a good chance, but there's a chance that will remain with that person for a very long period of time if they get into it and are successful and it becomes a tool.
And if they don't, you could always resell it.
Unlike the games console, which will be worthless within 12 months.
Yeah, well, he is really getting good on the bass guitar. Very proud of him. Learning by himself. Anyway.
I don't see it as a bad thing. I think it's a great thing. You know, you can take your time, get away from the world, just enjoy life itself. You know, it's a good thing to learn how to play an instrument, learn how to draw, something like that. Do something constructive.
Other than that, Earth is still flat.
It's been that way.
Did you get into it, any of you, over the Christmas dinner table, so to speak?
I do have an interesting story about it. I was doing an outage in Ohio at the steel mill, and there was a group of iron workers standing around talking about flat Earth, and one of them said your name.
No way.
Hold on, said your name?
Your name.
Who's
No,
feeding
it
back?
said Nathan Oakley.
I think that's Neil. Neil, whatever you're doing, stop. You're feeding back really badly, so I don't know how you're listening to us, but it's causing a load of feedback. Neil, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm on mute.
No, but when you're not, you're causing feedback, is what I'm saying. I don't know if you're too close to speakers or something, but yeah, or just turn down whatever you're listening to on, because you can hear it. Sorry, what were you saying, John? Someone called your name?
No, they said your name.
My name?
Like I heard, yeah.
What?
There was like 5 guys. Yeah, there's 5 guys standing around, like, you know, talking about flat Earth. I mean, they weren't talking about it like it was flat, but. And then I heard somebody say something about Nathan Oakley, but, you know, I didn't. The subject changed by the time I was able to stop what I was doing and get over there. But I thought that was interesting.
Okay. Good to know, I suppose.
There's somebody in Mansfield, Ohio listening to you.
Yeah. It kind of makes sense. If that conversation comes up, then why wouldn't they have heard of me, I suppose? Running a show daily, people are going to have heard of it, right? It's going to hopefully come up. I want that. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing that I'm on people's lips when they mention flat Earth, but that's fine by me. You know, great if it could get me to 20,000 subscribers.
Well, I talk about you all the time on my construction site, so I don't see it uncommon. And word is getting around. I mean, believe it or not, flat Earth is spoken of in many, many places.
Good morning.
Hey, 10th. Have a good Christmas.
Very good Christmas. It was wonderful. The grandkids were wild, like it should be.
Good stuff.
Hey, Neil, good morning.
Good morning, 10th.
So, what's the topic, you guys? I jumped in. Flat Earth is being spoken everywhere.
No, John just mentioned that my name got mentioned. That was all.
Well, that's on a regular basis, I would think.
No, a construction site. John heard Nathan Oakley's name mentioned on a construction site.
Oh, like that's the oddest thing that could ever happen.
Well, I mean, it's just odd that I watch the show pretty much daily, and then I hear someone talking about it. You know, it was kind of odd.
Well, in today's technology, where the guy's working with an earpiece tied to his phone, listening to any podcast he wants, it's kind of regular, I think.
You know, 10th, it is not. It's not like it's on ABC or NBC.
I said podcast.
I know, but I'm saying Flat Earth Debate is not on freaking ABC TV in America.
Every TV station, every show on Earth is on the flat Earth. So everything's on flat Earth.
Oh, I got you.
the plane anyway.
And I
it's
heard you
not that they
almost
were
slipped the
talking
other day and said planet.
I did.
Say again, John?
It's not that they were talking about flat Earth. Like I've heard that before. It was the fact that Nathan's name was mentioned that surprised me. But I was like kind of in a bind with a instrument I was working on, so I couldn't hear more.
Yeah, I think one day Nathan's going to be walking by a construction site and hear his own name mentioned.
Maybe. That's Nathan Oakley. Get him!
Go ahead, Nathan. Let me hear the adverb.
You mean they're not just going to whistle?
If you're talking about, I think it's strange if you're talking about flat Earth and you don't hear Nathan Oakley's name mentioned.
There we go. That's the spirit. Yeah.
No, that is true. Whoever said that, I do have a beautiful ass.
Yeah, I thought they always whistled when he walked past you guys.
Oh, here we go. The show's descending already.
No.
Nathan, for your New Year's resolution, you got to stop being a degenerate.
Yeah. Come on, we get more subscribers if we get off the construction side, get out of the school zones.
Stop being a degenerate.
What the
hell?
They want you to go to schools and yell at kids or something, I think they said.
I'm lost in this conversation. I don't know where you're going with this or what you mean. Explain yourself, Neil.
You called yourself a degenerate about 20 shows ago.
How dare you? I think you'll find I called myself a pervert.
Oh, yeah, same thing.
Not
Pervert,
at all.
excuse
How
me.
dare you? How very, very dare you?
I meant pervert.
How dare you call a degenerate a pervert?
The other way around. How dare you call a pervert a degenerate? My God.
Oh my gosh. This is
That's the thing now.
Prevert.
To me, you're right on guy.
It just sounds.
We all need repentance.
The Judean people's front all over again.
Perverts are the ones I'm worried about. Perverts.
Curverts, indeed.
Nah, that was a good one. Curverts. I like that one.
Wow,
nice segue.
That's on a level of you clitted me.
Yeah, that got up there. Well, now that we got that out of the way.
Yeah, there's the ether war to talk about.
What ether war?
Yeah, the whole idea that there's a downward vector is somehow, this is yet to be explained to me, connected to ether. Now, that connection's not been made yet. Maybe it'll come up and it'll be non sequitur like the last thing that was used to claim we've got a bias downwards. I don't know. But this is being labelled, 10th, the ether wars. And don't ask me why, I don't get it. Do you get it? Anybody else? Explain to me why it's being connected to ether.
Well, prior to this show. Go on, John.
I'll tell you why, because
I think
it's being pushed by Bob and Bob Nodell and Richard Gets It. They're both ether boys.
That's a who, not a why.
I think I can answer that.
Yeah, John.
It's a roundabout way of not having a container. Because if the ether is containing the gas, that means there's another medium for it to press upon.
Yeah, but that's still be a container. It's still containing it, even if it's temperature or frequency, sound. A container's still a container. No matter what you're calling that, if it's a medium holding another medium, it's a container to that medium. So
ether is not
Hold on. This makes no sense.
No.
If you're asserting that there's a downward bias, that would be, at least in globehead logic, and a reason to assert no need for container. Gas is going down, go boom boom like bouncy balls poured into a fish tank. So therefore, the downward bias is their legitimization of there being gas here without a container on the globe side. So why is there a requirement for ether? I still doesn't connect together for me. Maybe it's just me.
Oh, probably because Einstein read about it and said there needs to be ether in space. Maybe because he's a retard.
Yeah, but they don't abide by Einstein on the globebuster side of this argument, do they? In fact, they
I
use
don't
that
know where
like
they
we
got
do
ether
when we
from
say
other than-
relative. When we say the word relative, they say, you mean Einstein? It's like, no, not relativity.
Well, it's an equivocation anyway, but that's usually what it comes down to in the argument.
Equivocating, what are they describing that's being equivocated? So I still don't
They're
get the
trying
connection.
to
Why is it?
describe space.
Say again.
I think they're trying to describe what space is. They're just calling it fucking ether, and why? I don't know.
So they want to retain the idea of having a space,
Yeah,
and they just want to juxtapose the word space with the word ether.
right. They want to switch it and then change them. I
So
think
does
it's
this-
just a way for humans to describe a medium, but
Okay,
I'm not the one that wrote it down. So.
fine. Outer space is fake. You can't have gas pressure without a container. I thought their rebuttal to that was, well, gas go down, go boom, boom. But now you're saying, well, also ether. Is it just like a bit of one, a bit of the other, add in a bit of magical medium, add in a bit of assumption of downward bias? Is that what this is? Just a melting pot of nonsense?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
That's why it's an incoherent bias.
Incoherent because it doesn't make any sense, you mean?
Yeah, none of the arguments just kind of slapped together with, super glue and toothpaste.
That's a quote I got from it's now been torn down, but there was a very, very high-end car dealership around the corner from me, like literally stone's throw. And he had a Lamborghini in there one day. And I went in, I was like, wow, V12 Lambo, I'll have a look at that. So I went in and I spoke to the dealer. I'm like, mind if I have a look at the Lamborghini? And he's like, yeah, no problem. Do you want to look inside the engine bay? I was like, yeah, please, yeah. So he opens up the bonnet, as we call it, and shows me inside. And there's all these carbon fibre panels and stuff. I go, wow, it looks pretty neat, eh? He goes, no. He lifts one of the panels and there's like zip ties. He goes, it's Italian under the skin. He says it's held together with zip ties and dreams. I thought that was a great quote. Held together with zip ties and dreams.
Well, so far in this conversation, we've talked within the begging the question of ether. So let's first prove ether.
What is it?
It's the
First show it me, and then
the-
we'll know what it is because we'll know what it is, right? What is it?
Right.
Well, the best I can glean from the people I've spoken to is it is the non-physical physical. That's seriously the best I've gotten.
What? A contradiction in terms?
Yes, if you take everything out of a jar, ether is left. If you have a jar of nothing, that's ether. Yeah, that's what I've got.
Interesting.
Okay, now I get the connection with that because they want they need a medium for light to propagate through as a wave, right?
So are they now relabeling a vacuum in ether?
Yes, everything's an ether.
We just had. Sorry, John. Sleeping Warrior's arrived, and he will be able to shed light on this question. Hey, Sleeping Warrior.
Hey, what's the question?
Why is it being called, quote, Ether Wars? What the hell? Not what's ether, although that is a question we're on to right now. But why? How is this idea of a downward bias labelled ether war? It makes no sense to me. What's the connection?
I didn't realise there was an equivalence argument for the downwards direction that isn't there compared to ether. Where's that come from?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking. Maybe I was wrong. Anthony will not be able to shed some light on this either. Okay, fair enough.
First I've heard. I've heard. I've never heard it being described as an ether war before.
Well,
Yeah.
John, share your jar. When you take everything out of a jar, see what Anthony says.
Okay, yeah, it's ether is the non-physical physical. If you empty out a jar, ether is left.
The non-physical physical.
Yeah, yep, that's what I've been able to glean.
Pure
out so far.
capability in a jar.
That sounds like a contradiction of the law of non-contradiction. That.
Yeah, when you point that out, they tell you you're just not listening to the entire argument.
Okay, then.
No,
Well, I'm glad we
no-
cleared that
no
up.
comment.
Clarity has been shed.
No comment, I suppose, is the answer to that one. I don't see the equivalence, to be honest.
I don't get it either. But apparently, from before you got here, it seems that there's just a whole cluster screw of nonsense thrown in a big mixing pot.
So is this ether that's left in the jar, is it measurable?
No, no. It's not physical, but it's physical.
So it's like it's much like the geometric horizon. You can't see it, but it's there.
No, it's more like conceptual medium of space-time and it being bent. You know, it's not a physical medium in the respect that it's only existent in conceptual mathematics. But that non-physical medium is being bent to develop the conceptual space-time, causing this gravity concept to be a physical thing. I mean, it's not a force, but you can think of it as a force, you know, that sort of thing. It's much more like that.
Okay,
It's
so then
exactly
maybe
like
space-time is ether too. So ether bent?
The ether's like space-time, by the sounds of things, yes.
But
So it can't be validated scientifically.
No. But where the ether is kind of the religious position of the people arguing the downward bias. I think that's why it's called the ether wars.
Effects get validated scientifically. Let's just get that clear. Not everything requires scientific validity. So some things just are descriptions of things, and that doesn't require science. Now, a phenomenon, something occurring in nature, something happening, and you looking at that thing happening and going, what causes that? For example, the big yellowy orange light in the sky. Yeah, that's a phenomenon. Something occurring in nature. You go, wow. Now you can give it a description based on just so stories about what you think it's doing in a sky vacuum. That would be the sun. But it's still just something occurring in nature and you don't know what's causing it. So science would be open to the inquiry of what is that light in the sky? Yeah, what causes that? That's a scientific question or an inquiry open to scientific method. So it's not about just, well, what's ether? Well, have you got scientific evidence for it? Well, what's happening? Is ether something happening? Because if it was something happening, then fine. Validating the cause of what's happening would be something open to scientific inquiry. Now, if it's just something that you're describing, what is it? Show it me. As opposed to empty out a jar when there's nothing in, you're left with ether. That makes no sense.
How can they show you non-physical?
Well, if you're going to describe something, you've got to be describing something. It doesn't have to be something even happening. Now, you can describe things that are just happening without establishing the cause either. Again, not necessarily requiring science, unless you wanted to know the cause of it. Then you'd put it through the scientific method. But not everything requires scientific validity, is what I'm saying. You know, if you just got something and you just want to describe it, you can just describe it. But you've got to actually have something to describe first. You know, not the lack thereof.
All right, so when Whitsitt says, okay, it's density for sure is most of it, and this electrostatic is so weak, it's negligible. But he takes the negligible, the very weak that he ascribes to it, and then he matches it with ether, I suppose, in his argument, but he's never shown ether. We've never seen ether.
Maybe. I don't know how this attaches, so let's not speculate about what Whitsitt or anybody else might do with their connections.
That's a question
it's not
I'm
reasonable.
asking.
Sorry, go on, Tenth.
No, that's a question I'm asking. It seems like to me, he says everything's electrostatic, everything is positive, negative, you know, everything. I mean, wood, everything. Okay, fine. Now what? And then he show it to me. Show me how this works. But it's just a theory in the sense, not scientific, but, you know, this is my guess that this is what it is. Okay, fine guess. Now, where's the proof? How do I see it in nature? Well, the downward bias. Yeah, but what about the upward bias?
According to Lemon, it's the water that the fish swim in. That's their medium, and the ether is our medium.
Just try the same trick I tried with Sleeping Warrior. A man who definitely knows the answer to this question has arrived. Hey, Sleeping Warrior. Hey, Adam Meakin.
Hey, Nathan.
Hello.
What question is that?
Well, we've got this idea in the community that we find ourselves in, labelled the Flat Earth community, that we have this downward bias. And for some reason, and I don't know what, that's my question, it's been labelled, quote, the ether war, end quote. I don't know why that would be. What connection is there?
Oh, that was me being psychic. The connection is it's all to do with the application of the scientific method. And whilst gravity is a bit of fun that we tackle with the ballers, there was a label I put there because a year ago, when that was the point of contention that I thought as flat earthers would be challenging on by now. So that's the point, that it's this topic of discussion for us flat earthers to chew over. There's two distinct camps, aren't there? They're clear already. But yeah, that's my comprehension of it.
So, Adam, are you saying because we destroyed the baller's gravity position, now certain flat earthers have to come up with something to replace it?
No. I'm saying the gravity is a precursor. I'm saying the ether wars was something that for years I felt brewing. It's a discussion the community, for want of a better phrase, has got to have. And I think the founding in understanding scientific method, I think most of the community now enables us to progress with that. And it's not to say there isn't effects that we're measuring, and no one's denying the effects. I don't think it's necessary to put it into a causation for why things go down, go boom, boom. But I do think it's a separate topic that we'll have a range of discussions on. It starts from the basics when we were starting on this journey and not trained in method and all sorts of stuff. The first things you come across are things like Sagnac and bits like that, and there's still a question as to what is going off there. I don't have a problem with investigating it. I have a problem with qualifying. My opinion on ether is it's a flat earther's dark matter. It's a place where we can stick our problems, things we observe, and to use it there, we have to invent a medium that we don't have evidence for.
All right. Well, that begs the question, since we have air pressure, we live in a closed system. And so whatever this ether is, if it's even anything, it has to be within a closed system that allows for air pressure to exist.
Yeah, I wouldn't think the two are...
Hold on, someone's causing feedback in Discord. Two or three of you with your mics wide open. Did someone want to add something? I've got CIA, Redman, and Sinclair.
I was going to ask, who started the ether idea? Which one of them?
Which one of them?
Which one of them? Yeah. Michelson, Gale, like which one started the idea, Einstein, and which one started the idea there had to be this ether word? Because it was something they didn't understand in the first
before you
place
answer,
too,
can
right?
you turn your speakers right down, CIA, because we can hear you feeding back as well. But yes, I don't know who started it. The ether was in existence before Einsteinian nonsense came along. So I don't know who invented ether. Anybody on the panel know?
I think it was a convention of time. It's always been it's been manipulated and slightly amended as to what the ether is, but an etheric field's been around.
Isn't it a necessity if you have a vacuum of space versus if you're in a closed system?
No, I wouldn't link the two. I don't think it's an imaginary concept, ether. Yeah. So you can't therefore then say, well, it has to support gas pressure, this imaginary concept, or it has to disprove it. The two aren't necessarily got any link to each other per se, especially considering one's imaginary, where we put effects and attribute it to ether.
The link that I'm trying to tie it to is the fact that they placed the sun at 93 million miles away, and how does that light get to here? And that distance traveled is via the medium ether. But if you're in an enclosed system, then the sun's also with you in that enclosed system, and there's no need for an ether.
Welcome, Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Sleeping Warrior, the Adam Meakin, 10th Man, Neil, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome, one and all.
Morning.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good morning from a 3-inch snow-covered part of England. Did you guys have any snow overnight by any chance?
No, I had my mate in Manchester send me a picture of their lovely covering.
3 inches we got.
Technical message, Nathan. Your members only mode is on chat, live chat.
Yeah, I did that because I couldn't figure out how to turn it off when I scheduled the stream. Typically, I wouldn't schedule a stream on a Monday, but I did, and therefore it's members only, so lucky old you, members. But nevertheless, I've had a super chat from James Richard, which I'm going to read out before we do the housekeeping questions. Flat Earth versus globalist. We're witnessing today is a fight to keep truth hidden in unrighteousness, because this truth destroys all kings of Earth. Fair enough. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat, James Richard.
Hello.
Right, let's do some housekeeping. We'll rattle our way through it, and then we've got a little Sleeping Warrior presentation, which we'll get to after we've done housekeeping. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge, formerly known as Earth curvature?
Not even from a non-physical ether.
The horizon's an optical phenomena. It varies with day to day, condition to condition. You can't call boats going over the horizon anymore because it's an optical effect.
Hold on. If the Earth was a ball, then it would not just be an optical effect.
Yeah, but if the Earth's not a ball, then it's an optical effect like it is in real world.
And what's your proof for this?
Refraction.
No, not refraction.
The black swan.
Just looking at stuff in general. By default, the horizon's not a physical location. Instinctually, and everyone knows this at a base level. The horizon's not physical. But then when you go to the Earth curve maths and turn everything into side profile, then suddenly you've got a physical geometric sphere edge that's getting in the way of things. Shout out to Unitox Femu. It's invisible, but it's there. You can think of it as being there, Unitox Femu. Thank you for the super chat. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
It all moves in lockstep, so there's no detection of motion, but because of the bending of space-time, the galaxy seems to spin around the Earth, even though to the galaxy the Earth is spinning within it. Does that answer your question?
Of course.
Yeah, that's your reference frame's knackered, Nathan.
Yeah, indeed. You and your reference frames are ruined.
Yeah.
Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
No.
Only apparent distances.
I don't know, but it sure throws a wrench in Arwen's baller argument of lockstep.
Hold on, Unitox Femu's slow on the answering of the questions. So he says stars moving. I assume that's in reference to axial rotation. That'd be the stars moving, though, wouldn't it? As opposed to us moving on an axis on a sphere Earth.
Oh, look, a red Ferrari just drove past me, Nathan. That means we're on a ball.
What, you're saying it's non sequitur?
Yeah. Of course, it has to correct for Coriolis deviation at the steering wheel.
Just two rotors on the Chinook helicopter, mate. You can't distinguish whether you're on a sphere or not, an antipodal, just by looking at the sky.
Well, no, Arwin just hit the nail on the head. You would, because that would be an assertion that they're drifting with Coriolis deflection, i.e. you're turning underneath the stars and seeing them rotate because you're turning underneath them. Well, if that's the case, then we're on a non-inertial spinning reference frame, and things that leave that non-inertial spinning reference frame would drift away precisely as they claim on a globe Earth for us to observe Coriolis deviation. Distance to Sun is 186 blah 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 miles. We're moving on, are we, Unitox Femu? He's heckling us with super chats. I love it. Move on. Distance to the Sun.
But doesn't the sun? Well, there's no distance to the sun.
There's only apparent distances based on presuppositional vantage points.
Sure, we've just done this one, Nathan.
Yeah, like I say, we're being heckled with super chats. I'm not complaining, my friend.
So the Coriolis and the sun, when the sun goes down and lights the bottom of clouds. So when it's not attached to the Earth, right? Remember that one?
And all members, please stop heckling with super chats. You distract me.
No, shush, Owen. I thought you... Sleeping Warrior. No. He says...
I would never say something like that.
I know you wouldn't. You're as into the cash as I am. Not that anybody doesn't need cash. Everybody requires paying in some form or another. So there we go. Unitox Femu says, give me the question. Well, any scientific evidence of gravity there, Unitox Femu? Or anybody on the panel, moreover, I'm just joking.
I don't know why
What's
anybody
gravity?
would think such a thing.
The mumbling from Sleeping Warrior and what's gravity from Arwin. Go ahead, Sleeping Warrior. What did you say?
I don't know why anybody would think that there might be a thing called gravity. Where do we see anything that gives us that indication?
Shouldn't that be relabeled any evidence for an effect?
Hold on. There might not be any... Well, if you would know what it is, there might be.
Hoping that you carry on
What
a bit,
is it?
Arwin. Push it a little bit further.
Might be what Arwin...
If you would know what gravity was, then you might be able to find evidence for it.
Oh, right.
What is it, Arwin?
We know it's just...
No,
this is
next
getting
question.
Tedious. This is getting tedious. There's an assertion there's a downward bias, Anthony. There you go. Done.
Is that because all objects of mass are more dense than the medium that they're in? There are no objects of solid matter that are less dense than the air, so one might inadvertently and incorrectly come to the conclusion that there might be a downwards acceleration bias because we see all objects of solidity more dense than the medium that they're in. That might be the misapprehension.
Yeah, pretty concisely put, I suppose.
Yeah. Downward bias is for the dense.
Comprehension.
Hold on a second. Say again, CIA, whatever the rest of your name is.
There's another miscomprehension. Like when you set an object on the table and you remove the table, you didn't add a force per se. You just removed the thing that was resisting it. So there's not that force. There's no down force.
Yes, there is. Relative density disequilibrium force of denser objects versus medium. And as long as it's surrounded by a less dense medium, like air, even if it can't move, it's still going to press in that direction because it's still not at equilibrium with its surroundings.
You mean it's going to have resistance or not?
What?
So if I take the resistance, it's going to move. If I put the resistor back there at the table underneath your ass, then you're not going to move. If I remove the table, I didn't add a force to your head. I just removed the thing that was resisting your ass.
Let me just try the other way round, CIA, for Arwin. So if you replace the medium, you introduce liquid, and some of the things floated on it, moved up in the room that they're in. Again, what force have you applied? You've just changed the medium that they're in.
Was that a question to me?
No, I'm just trying to reverse what he's saying. He's saying, well, if you don't remove it, it's like, well, what if you change the medium completely, introduce water, and then they go up? You know, if you say, well, if I remove the table, the thing will go down, but there's no force applied, you're just removing the thing that's resisting it, putting it into what's actually called fall arrest. That's what he's trying to describe. And likewise, well, it's arresting the fall, but it's also arresting a medium like water, making all the stuff that's capable of floating moving upwards. If that was introduced, it's the same principle. It's just medium specific. I'm just going to read out some of the super chats because they're coming in thick and fast. So, Unitox Femo says, I caused the mic to fall. Well, yeah, you do if you pick it up. We've also got James Richard, who says gravity fails to meet any, in quotes, of scientific methods, but you can think of it that it meets them all. Well, I suppose you could think of it that way. Shout out to Powell Broder, who's joined as a lion. Thank you very much for joining as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member. And also another Unitox Femu, who's hitting the super chat hard and fast today. Thank you for all your support. And same goes to you, James Richard. Gravity is a good word for proving everything. Or proving nothing at the same time. Thank you, Unitox Femu, James Richard, Powell Broder for the support. Move on with housekeeping.
Just hang on.
Oh, go on.
One time.
Okay, I was going to say that example was very good because if you imagine a room with an inflated ball sitting on the table, and then you flood that room with water, as the water rises above the table, the ball is going to go up because of the medium. So that was a very good example.
Just the opposite of CIA's example, but yeah.
Again, though, it's an example of you're doing work. When you change the medium, work has been done to introduce a disequilibrium. And that's why the ball will move until it goes back into equilibrium. But the reason is you've introduced disequilibrium. Now, whether that was a rest caused by a shelf stopping the ball moving, then you change the medium, you've still done work by creating disequilibrium. You've done the disequilibrium in reverse. This time you've changed the medium as opposed to just creating disequilibrium by moving it out of equilibrium, lifting the object up. But you've still, the net effect is to create a density disequilibrium that then has to play out. In this case,
I can still give the example the way around that CIA did. If I apply, you say work, let's use a hairdryer, to a puddle, in a very short period of time, I can see a disequilibrium being created, and then the liquid will disappear because it's gone upwards. But work had to be done. Now, likewise, work by the sun, heating it up, would create that disequilibrium also. But an upward vector in that example without anything unnatural occurring. Like flooding a room. Not that that might not occur naturally, but I don't know why I said that.
Yeah, but the point being work is being done, whether that's the work on the object or in this case the work in the medium. It requires the creation of disequilibrium for us to see density disequilibrium play out. There is no density disequilibrium when things are in equilibrium or in a rest from it. It can't play. Change has to occur first.
Right.
It doesn't do it on its own.
Indeed. Another shout out to Unitox Femu. So, sometimes nice to be Santa. I think he's referring to me pointing out that he's smashing the super chat hard and fast. Thank you very much indeed for being Santa, Unitox Femu. Really do appreciate your support. Right, we'll move on in housekeeping. Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Dr. Becky can't formulate a valid hypothesis, unfortunately.
Can she? Or won't she?
No, she can't. Oh, no, actually, she claims to be a physicist. Maybe she could, but most of the others can't.
Well, not in her field, right? But doesn't mean that she can't in general.
Oh, does she class herself as an astrophysicist?
Does she?
Who knows what Becky is? Anybody? 10th?
I'm going to say that Dr. Becky cannot formulate a valid hypothesis because she claims to be an astrophysicist.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I'll go double check and get back with you.
Thank you.
I was going to say 10th should know this. He knows her date of birth, how big her feet are.
No, he doesn't. He's not obsessed with her. He sent her one comment and then highlights the fact that she never responded, that the trolls defended her. That doesn't mean he knows her shoe size.
I'm just joking.
Wow, I'm going to defend 10th to the hilt when it comes to anything like this because she's female, therefore all sorts of implications could be drawn.
Actually, I do know a phenomenon like shoes exist.
You observe phenomena of shoes.
Come on.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. No,
but they can be phenomenal, though.
Yeah, but any hypotheses?
No, none.
Got plenty of phenomena. That's the point, right?
All these word in astrophysics, isn't it?
We covered this in the pre-show, right? There's plenty of phenomenon to be studied. What's causing this? What's causing that? Well, especially in astro.
Got it.
Go on.
I've got it. I'm Dr. Becky Smethurst, an astrophysicist at the University of Oxford.
Yeah, your
I love making videos about science with an unnatural level of enthusiasm. I like to focus on how we know things, not just what we know, and especially the things we still don't know. If you ever wondered about something in space and couldn't find an answer online, you can ask me.
Really? I see. You see how pertinent that is, given that's her blurb. You can ask me how you can have gas pressure without a container, then, right, Becky? How can you have gas pressure without a container?
Gravity, isn't it? That was what M. Scott Veitch did in his Forbes article. Gravity. Oh yeah, that thing that doesn't pull. Yeah.
Well, I did just what her about section on her channel just read. I asked her, and she still hasn't got back with an answer. Many people have asked her.
Maybe if you stopped obsession about her shoe size, you'd get somewhere.
This is where we got to give George Musa props, because he did get back to Craig and he did have a conversation with Craig. I think he's the only one that's ever had a conversation.
Quick shout out to Unisox Femu. It says, Diamond Rain on Saturn is answer. To what question, though? Maybe we'll never find out. And then he's heckling us to move on with the housekeeping, which I said I'd keep brief. Any evidence the Molten Iron Core?
And that's all for me. Merry Christmas, Nathan, he says.
Says, that's all for me. Merry Christmas. Yes, indeed. Thank you. Thank you very much for all the super chats. I really do appreciate it. And welcome, Elijah. But yeah, I will read out your super chat that's most pertinent because it hasn't been answered. Any evidence of a Molten Iron Core? Thanks, Unitox Femi.
Squiggles on a graph that we call P waves and S waves, and that proves that the core of Earth is solid.
No, they don't. No, they got it wrong. They didn't predict correctly when digging down 12K.
Nathan, the P waves and S waves.
That's just repeating the same thing now, isn't it?
But they're not possible on any other shape, Nathan. P waves and S waves, I'm telling you.
Hold on. Now you've introduced a begging the question fallacy that you're going to assume the P waves and S waves are travelling through a spherical surface that you've assumed, even though I've pointed out that P waves and S waves are wrong when digging down 12K. So what, just introduce the fundy presupposition of a sphere on top of that, so I don't notice and you don't have to address that the P waves and S waves aren't consistently accurate in terms of their predictions?
Nathan, I'm a physics teacher. You're just a grocery delivery boy.
I yield. You win.
Oh, appeals to education is always the winner.
Of course.
Well, they can't even show us a physical Earth curve, and they want us to believe they have something 4,000 miles below us they know about, and that's Earth curve is on the surface and should be there 1.22 miles at 1 foot observer height. So if that's not there, then I doubt they know what's in their presupposition that we live on a ball that has a core.
Any evidence of the R value, Earth radius?
Another presupposition.
Assume it at all costs.
R?
Sasha's on the panel, I should say, Unisox Family. Thank you very much, as you're actually here to say thank you to for all the super chats. No, can't hear you. Didn't hear you, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah. No, only I want to say to unmute me. Nothing. I have nothing to say more. Yeah.
No, I'm saying it to
Merry
you.
Christmas.
I'm saying to you, thank you very much for all the super chats. It's also kept the chat reasonably flowing because it's members only today.
It's Christmas time. It's end of the year. You know, I'm watching you like for 4 years.
Wow.
I appreciate your work, and that's it.
And I appreciate your support. Any evidence of the R value? Anybody at all?
But you need to promise me one thing. You need to come in fucking Coventry.
No swearing!
Coffee.
Totally ruined that.
When Corona finish, yeah.
When Corona finish, come and visit you, did you say?
Because we are here, man. You know.
Did he say Coventry?
Anthony?
Did he say Coventry?
Yeah.
Unitox. It'd take a few more super chats than that to get me to Coventry.
That's
I was going to say the best thing about
Well,
Coventry.
I can come in, Lamington, no problem.
We'll have to sort it out. Martin's been pestering me to do
10 minutes.
We will sort it out. Martin, in 2020, obviously this doesn't come to fruition, wanted to do a meetup, maybe even replicate going to the cathedral we did the first meetup at. But that's something that hopefully we'll get arranged in 2021. So yeah, for sure, definitely, we will end up shaking hands. I'm in no doubt.
And man, I'm making so delicious pizza that you cannot imagine. You never eat that in England.
Can I ask how you pronounce your chat name? Is it Unitox Femu? Because I look at that and go, it just goes like a sneeze.
Yeah, that means in Croatian, that means despite everything.
Despite everything. Oh, cool name.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's difficult to pronounce for English people. Yeah, and also it's difficult for me to speak English because that is third language.
Your third language?
Yeah, I lived in Italy 12 years. I speak Croatian, Italian, and English.
What's your second language?
Italian. Croatian, Italian. Yeah. Croatian is the native language. Is that what it's actually called? Croatian.
Yeah. Serbo-Croatian, because that was Yugoslavia. Yeah.
I thought you said in creation.
Croatian. Anyway,
I'm Yugoslavian. If you want to know, but that country not exist anymore.
Excellent stuff. No offense, Unitox Femu, but we are going to continue with housekeeping. Everyone.
Okay, yeah, of course.
Thank you again for the support.
When he said that his name meant despite everything, I thought he meant the spiders everything when he first said it.
I thought he said the start of everything.
In spite of everything. Croatia, then Italian, then English, third language. My God. Any evidence you can have gas pressure without a container?
No.
Despite everything, the ballers say no.
Yes.
Oh, here we go.
Gradient.
Darwin.
Gradient.
Gravity.
Gradient.
I don't know what it is, so next question. Sorry.
Gravity, which you don't know what it is, so next question. That's not going to work here. What are you talking about? Quoting Neil deGrasse Tyson about how he doesn't know what gravity is. We do from George Musa. It's not a force. So no, it's not holding gas here.
And Einstein. Better off citing Einstein.
Well, Musa quoting Einstein, gravity's not a force.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's still bends space-time.
Maybe Musa is wrong.
Well, no, he's quite explicit about how right he is. He explicitly tells you that you can...
questions of the Glover, like when you make citation about some Neil deGrasse Tyson or Musa, whatever, they said, and if they are wrong...
But
you understand?
He's been explicit though. I was going to say he's been quite detailed in how you can think about it. So after explicitly telling you it's not a force, he just claims that you can think of it as a force.
But how you can think?
Oh, you'd like an example? Anthony, can you detail emergent forces from Fight the Flat Earth, please?
Yeah, he's citing Professor Eric Verlinde from the University of Amsterdam, who's looking at a new way to describe gravitation using entropy, which is kind of our argument, a variation on our arguments. But Craig doesn't realise that at this point. He hasn't realised that it's supporting our position because he sees the word force as at the end of entropic force, and he thinks that's enough. So, it's entropy or entropic forces or apparent forces or emergent forces are all stemming back to Dr. Eric Verlinde, who describes an effect of entropy. That's the shortest way I can say it.
Okay, but entropy would dictate that the gas we're breathing would fill the space if the sky was a vacuum, so that's definitely not working in their favour.
Yeah, but it can be true because the sky is a vacuum, so therefore the second law of thermodynamics must be wrong.
Well, no, they say the second law of thermodynamics does not apply to the Earth, meaning that it doesn't apply to their model because it violates the second law of thermodynamics, natural law, as in laws we observe in nature.
I was having a good conversation with somebody, a ball earther on Flat Earth 24/7 on Discord the other day, and I realised how triggered he got. You call it the sky is not a vacuum. Well, I said I went outside for a walk in space today, and he said, you went to a walk in space? And I explained what I meant. Because on their model, obviously, it's an open system, so there's no barrier between the deep space and us, because we're in it. But he's like, no, there is a barrier. Oh, really? What is the barrier? He said, it's the atmosphere. I said, right, and where does the atmosphere stop and where does space begin? And he didn't give a coherent answer. And I said, there is no barrier, is there? So in the end, he conceded that there was no barrier. And I said, right, so when I go outside into the air or the atmosphere, I could equally call that space because there's nothing separating us between the two.
Yes,
and
and
can see.
And do you know who also defines it that way?
Who?
NASA.
Really?
Yeah, space starts at sea level.
Oh, brilliant. I'd love to. Where's that? Oh, you'll have to present that, Nathan, at some point.
I'll dig it out.
Because if space starts at sea level, where does space start sea level? That kind of fucks their whole argument up, doesn't it?
Well, other than at sea level, if space was a vacuum, if the sky was 10 to the minus 17 Torr vacuum, then the gas we're breathing would fill the space, and we would be at 10 to the minus 17 Torr at sea level.
Oh, dear.
Any evidence?
Doesn't the imagine?
Go on, John. Is that John?
Yeah, I was going to say, doesn't the imaginary containers run out to the Kármán line, or does it go to the moon now with imaginary containers?
Depends which reference. I think it was 1996 or somewhere thereabouts. They introduced this idea of the atmosphere extending to the moon. It then got buried, only to be dug out in about 2017, I'm going to say. Was it 3 or 2 years ago? Was it 2018 they started quoting this nonsense from 1996 about the gradient going all the way up to the moon, with the moon spinning around us, so like a whirlwind flying through space, I suppose. When you imagine the corkscrew image of the heliocentric model flying around the Great Attractor, you see it in this corkscrew motion, right? Well, if you've got the moon with an extended atmosphere like a sperm tail extending to the moon from Earth, and that's whizzing around us and we're whizzing around the sun, you'd have literally like a hurricane motion of atmosphere going around as you looked at it from a third perspective. You know, if you could get out away from their ideas of this Great Attractor with us flying around the sun with the sun flying around it. Just absurd. But there we go.
Hey, Nathan, when you're done with the housekeeping, there's a message Bev posted in Master B.
Message for me in Master B? Did you say? I didn't catch the end of that. Say that again, Trent.
Yes, Bev posted the message. It looks like it's coming from Ranty in Master B.
I was going to go to Sleeping Warrior with his presentation because we have just finished housekeeping. I don't think I've missed anything out. So can it wait till after?
Yeah, that's fine.
I mean, is it on topic for this specific question, is all I'm asking. If not, we go to Anthony. Then
no, it could wait. We have time on the show.
Perfect. Anthony's going to present something now. So what I'd ask of the Discord and G+ panel, if you can just keep any questions that you've got till the end of the presentation, even if you don't necessarily agree with what's being presented, it doesn't matter. I don't care. I want to get to the end of it before anybody interrupts. So if you can bear or give Sleeping Warrior indulgences in this regard while he's presenting. I do actually have you on screen now, Sleeping Warrior, so...
You see my Good Times for All screen, yeah?
No, I just see a black screen.
Oh. Stop sharing. Let me retry that. Present now. Entire screen. Should be that one. Do you now see it?
Nope.
I see it.
Really?
Me too.
Okay, what I'll do then in that case is I'll try something like pinning me and then unpinning me and pinning you. Let's just try if that works. There we go.
Right. So, this has come because someone sent me a link. I wouldn't normally have caught this because it happened over Christmas. But someone sent me a link and a timestamp. So shout out to the people that send me info. It helps progress the conversation. The presentation's for the purpose of anybody that might be on the fence with regards to whether or not there is a downwards acceleration force that appears to be like gravity or not. If you're not sure, this is the way you need to come back to in future. So make a note of the time of this. It's like 30 minutes in, and obviously it's on this particular show. Okay, so it comes from Zach's channel. Zach had a conversation with a few people the other day. It's entitled Talking Electricity with LC King, Grabbing Energy Out of the Air on Good Times for All channel. And it's only had 560 views now, but it was only streamed 2 days ago on Boxing Day. My comments underneath, you'll come to that in a minute, so I'm not going to read it out now. I want to try and get through it as quick as I can. So I don't have any beef with Zach personally, or on topic as far as I'm aware. He did bring us to the topic of diffraction and how things blend into the horizon, and that was one of the key things that we realized was happening with regards to the layer of dirty air at the horizon, or ether band, or whatever you want to call it. The effect we see at the horizon that distorts what we perceive is one of the key things that he brought to the topic, and that's progressed the story and credit where it's due. I don't have any issue with Zach personally. Might not agree with everything he says, but nonetheless, that's what he brought to it, and that was a really big moment for us. Now, I'm going to cite 3 video clips from Bob saying stuff, and I've got them circled in this bit here. You can see where they are if you want to go back and listen to them from this hangout, and it's 3 points deliberately to move the conversation forward. There's no personal attack. It's just to point out things that might not be actually true, or things that are actually incorrect. So I'm going to flick over to my sound feed so I can pick it up now, but I'm going to also present on screen what he actually says and my response. So hopefully, if I now play this, you guys should hear it. So there's a little bit longer, so you hear that I'm not cherry picking it. So let me patch this through.
If you take a gas and you put it next to a chamber that is evacuated, right? You've created a vacuum chamber in it, and you have a little window in between them, and you open them. Is it true then that the gas will go in and fill the available space and go bouncing around all over the place? The answer to that is absolutely yes. There is no doubt about that will happen. It does happen. Nobody is disputing that. However, what what is being ignored here is that after a while, what will happen is the gas collisions will eventually begin to slow, right? They will, those collisions will become less violent as that energy is kind of depleted out of that initial energy transfer. And the gas will begin to settle and start taking on a density gradient bottom first. So in other words, what I'm saying is that the gas will settle on the bottom and it will provide its own gradient.
So Bob emphasized the final bit, the bottom first bit. My response is that, hey, Bob, gas collisions are elastic and do not lose momentum over time, as you wrongly asserted, from 1 hour, 8 minutes onwards. Your incorrect assertion is therefore not the cause of any layering. So what else could be causing it? I know, we can test it too. Now, there's actually 2 causes to it, which I'm going to show you in a sec. But density is one element to it, and the other element is the sun and the biogeochemical cycle, which we'll come to. So he's wrong to say that the collisions between the container walls are losing momentum, because they're elastic. And I only learned that in the last fortnight or so, courtesy of Meakin. And I didn't realize the importance of it when he said it. But the elastic collisions mean that they do not lose momentum, contrary to what Bob is saying, and therefore that cannot be the cause of any perceived gradient or pressure gradient or density gradients, whatever you want to describe it. I've got this background laid in such a way to create the perception that I'm trying to describe. Bob's perception is that the cause of this gradient in the atmosphere is the loss of momentum. He doesn't realize, and he won't accept this when it's pointed out to him, but he has to accept it because the collisions are elastic and there is no net loss from the collisions between the walls of the container and the molecules themselves. So there is no momentum loss. That's the first point. Second point I want to go to now, if I go back to this, at 1 hour, 11 minutes and 12 seconds onwards, this is what Bob then says.
Coming out with these challenges, trying to explain to me about how there is no downward vector. Well, I'm sorry, Sleeping Warrior, there is a downward vector. It can be proven every way but Sunday, and you simply ignore all of it. I see why the ballers have a problem with these guys, because there is a downward vector.
So Bob's insisting that there is a downwards vector, right? This perception is caused by the perception that everything drops to the ground. Well, that's because you can't pick up fluids, liquids, and all objects of mass are all more dense than the medium in air that we live in. There is no downwards vector, Bob. From 1:11:12, you insist that there is a downwards vector. Bob, all solids are more dense than air. The least dense or the lightest solid that we have is said to be that pale blue stuff, aerogel, which is this stuff here. It is around 6 times more dense than air. Your perception is that all the solids are being downwards biased. No, they are more dense than its medium. And if we increase the density of the medium, guess what? That aerogel will become the egg and rise, contrary to your belief that there is some bias. The perceived bias is caused by the relative density of the two things in question. So the aerogel is more dense than the air that it sits in. And that's said to be the lightest known solid, man-made solid, but it makes my point. So the perception that there is a downward bias is because all objects of mass are greater or more dense than the medium that they're in. So that gives you the perception that there is a downward bias, but it's not. It's caused by the differences or the differential between the solids over liquids and gases, because all solids are more dense than gas, all of them. So that deals with the second point. Move to the next slide. So 1 hour, 16 minutes in, this is what he says.
But, otherwise, I'm not going to change my mind on this. It is obvious to me that there is an absolute down. There is an absolute down. Up and down are not relative directions unless you're a ball earther and you subscribe to Einstein's relativity. Up and down are absolutes. There's no way around it. And the reason they are absolutes is because there is an ongoing, small, minor, very weak downward acceleration that is present. Now, as far as what causes that, that's wide open for debate. Now, is it true?
Okay, so it is obvious to me that there is an absolute up and down. The key point here is it is obvious to me. Up and down, by definition, are relative directions. So to Bob, there is an up and down. That is true. But that doesn't make it universal. It doesn't make it objective. It doesn't make it an absolute. It is obvious only to Bob, okay? Because Bob's left or right would be the opposite for me. So what Bob would call right, I would call left, because I'm facing Bob, yeah? So it's obvious only to Bob that there is an absolute up and down. No, not absolute. It's relative to the human. So, and by the way, when Bob compares up-down relative directions to Einstein's relativity, that is a false equivalence because it is not relative to Einstein's theory of general relativity. Bob conflates these two things and they're completely and utterly wrong. So when Bob compares relative directions to Einstein's relativity, it's a false equivalence because they're not connected. But he's making it sound like they are so that he can cause division between relative directions and Einstein's relativity, and they're not the same thing. So correct him when you hear him say that. It's a false equivalence. Okay, so let's go back to his the slides. So all my comments that I've just read out are all in this thing, which is hidden on Zach's channel. If you do want to read the message again, it's on screen for you. There's the gradients that we're talking about in the atmosphere. It's a visualization of. It's more pressure at the bottom. It's less pressure at the top. It's caused by the air depleting. And the question is it being pulled down the way Bob claims or believes or pushes? Or is there another explanation for it? We know what the biogeochemical cycle is. We get taught it in primary school when we're about 8. But we forget about it as an adult because it's not something that we come across very often. If you want to know more about this, just look at the pictures when you type in biogeochemical cycle on Google, then click images, and it tells you pretty much everything that you need to know. The bit that it doesn't tell you is that it's a collection of cycles: the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, the phosphorus, the oxygen, the hydrological cycle, the water cycle. There's about 10 or 12 of them. There's a lot of them that go on, and they're all caused by the sun. So the biogeochemical is a collective phrase to describe a whole variety of cycles, and they're all literally charged and powered by the sun. Okay. Now, the atmosphere that we live in, or the air that we breathe, we need to know 2 key words. We need to know isotropic, and we need to know homogeneous, and know what these words mean. If the atmosphere is isotropic, it is ununiform in all directions. If it is homogeneous, it is of the same kind. Now, we don't have a homogeneous atmosphere, but we do have an isotropic. Isotropy is ununiformity in all directions. Well, there is no uniformity in the atmosphere. It's a dynamic system charged by the sun, excited by the sun, and created by all the gas pressure. All the gases are created at ground level. So the sun is exciting the air that we breathe, but it's also causing the creation of gases at ground level, be it water or land. All of the gases are created at ground level, charged and powered by the sun. The reason for the gradients, as this image shows, the gradient is the sky, obviously, is caused by the creation of gases at ground level. We got taught it when we were 6, 7 years old. But because it gets so convoluted by science, no one remembers it. No one remembers it because gravity makes more sense. Logically, it does seem to make sense. But this is the reason why there's the gradients at the bottom. There's more pressure at the bottom because all the gases are created at ground level and they all rise through dispersal. They all disperse into the atmosphere. But when the sun disappears at nighttime, a lot of them then come back down again because the temperature reduces and we have something called condensation, or the condensing of gases. They all fall back to the earth. So that's the reason why there's a density gradient, right? That's why we have it getting more pressure at the bottom, less pressure at the top, and it's relative to the human, right? Really, the correct units are more dense and less dense because that's what it is, which takes me back to my test. Back in May of 2019, I demonstrated that by manipulating the medium, I caused an acceleration. Now, by changing the density of the medium, it doesn't really matter how you argue over it. Bob said in his last thing that you can argue over the cause. In that last clip that he said, let me flip back to it quick. He said, as far as what causes the downwards acceleration, that's wide open for debate. Well, we know that the biogeochemical cycle deals with one part of it. But when it comes to liquids and solids, this is the cause on the other side of it. So if you're talking about gases, because all solids are more dense than gases, then we're talking about the gas laws and the biogeochemical cycle. If we're talking about fluids and liquids and solids and things that go on that we can touch because they're perceptible to touch, then we do know the cause. So it depends on what you're talking about, sky or land or tangible things that we can touch. But we do know the causes of them. Gravity is literally being used, or this downwards acceleration bias or perception or electrostatics or whatever phrase you want to call it, is literally trying to confuse people. The simplicity is demonstrable, it's repeatable. We can all do it on ourselves with no experience, no expensive tools, it's just very simple to do. We can test it, we can show it, we can prove it. We know what causes this downwards bias, which in this test demonstrated that the egg went up. So we know what causes it, and it depends on the medium. So final slide. Bob calls this down because Bob is human. Using the correct verbiage that Bob refuses to accept, the correct direction is simply more dense. And unless there is a human there to call it down, down is relative only to a human. It is a false equivalence to compare down being relative to Einstein's general relativity. Right, I'm done, boys.
Okay, I posted that link to that wiki last slide in the live chat, so check it out if you want to read that. But yeah, it describes it specifically as being relative to a human, i.e. your perception is based on you, as opposed to a fish's perception or something else. You know, it's relative. So it's very specific in that. But yeah, thank you very much. Good presentation. If anyone wants to challenge it, have any comments, feel free to... Hold on, Anthony. If anyone wants to... And can you back off your mic a little bit? Because you keep causing plosives. Anyway, anybody wants to challenge that, feel free. Now's your chance.
I want to know if he disagrees with Bob.
You having a laugh?
Off with his head!
Off with his head!
Let's keep the nonsense to a minimum. Does anybody actually disagree or want to challenge anything that Sleeping Warriors just presented?
I do want Adam to comment on the elastic collisions, because I didn't realise the significance of the elastic collisions until I heard Bob describing the slowdown in momentum of the gas pressure that was causing a perceived gradient. Adam?
Yeah. I'd like to see something that would corroborate that. I mean, from my understanding in the little setup that was described, if you release those molecules, then they'll be subject to gas behavior. Now, the way in which we would describe the energy state of those molecules and their speed and the likes would be to use PV equals nRT. So the thing that would vary, once you've just introduced those few molecules in there, the thing that's going to vary their speed everything else is fixed. The number of molecules is fixed. The volume is fixed. So the only thing that's going to change the rate of those collisions is the temperature. So you could slow the molecules down, but that would be as a result of a drop in temperature, as defined by PV equals nRT. I don't understand where they would be running out, because as you say, an elastic collision means they just hit each other and carry on as they were. There's no loss of energy with the collision.
That'll be something that we could ask Bob to demonstrate, though, right? If Bob thinks that there is a reduction in momentum, then we can show pressure loss as a function of time, because the momentum is lost during the non-elastic collisions that Bob thinks must be there.
Right, it's fundamentally incorrect. I think that was pretty much detailed by Adam, and yes, correct. The elastic collision detail has been part of the presentation in terms of the fake space we call a sky vacuum in basically every single presentation QE's done. Now, that's not to say that the significance, and I totally agree with Anthony, I'd heard it in every presentation QE had done, but it hadn't recognised the significance in terms of how you can then use it to your advantage when you're debating, until Adam pointed it out a couple of weeks ago. And so, I don't know why it was specifically for both me and Sleepy Mario, but we both kind of had a half Eureka moment going, well, that's actually a really useful angle. And in Anthony's case, he's like, well, I'd never heard of elastic collisions. And I was like, yeah, you have. You've heard them in all these presentations. And he was like, oh, yeah, I have. But it's just the way Adam, I don't know what it was about Adam's phrasing. But anyway, I want to get to Paul, who was trying to get a word in there, which is why I've just interrupted with that long little rant. Go ahead, Paul.
Well, I think, the way I understand it, just to kind of back up what Adam is saying, heat is the vibration of the particle. It's not the direction of the particle, it's just the vibrational. And what causes that is when photons hit the particle, it heats up and it starts to vibrate. Of course, everybody's screaming in the background, but it's the momentum and the direction that the elastic collisions occur. But the vibration is the movement of the particle just vibrating, causing the heat.
Did everyone catch that? Adam, did you catch all that?
Yeah, as I said, and that vibration rate is in PV equals nRT. The simplest way is if you increase the temperature, it's vibrating faster. As Paul's described, you can introduce energy like with a photon and heat it up with sunlight. That's the case. But I'd like to see this. I mean, it reminds me a little bit of what Brian was saying. And there is certain gas behaviour when we put things under pressurized systems where you will. Brian was talking about some industrial uses where they were saying you must agitate a cylinder beforehand, and that is correct. You will get some ordering when you put a gas into a cylinder under high pressure. There is relative density ordering that occurs, but that doesn't occur when everything's just acting under gas behavior. The reason that occurs is when it's under very, very high pressure, then you get a phase transition. So not directly, but the gas molecules begin to act more, in fact, very similar to liquid, because they've been compacted so close together. Even though they are gas-like still, there's nowhere for them to behave truly like gas molecules. So they start to behave with more direct fluid dynamics. And there you will get some density settling because they are behaving like fluids. Now, that is why you have to shake the canister, but you're shaking the canister to mix liquids, not mix gases. And that's where I think there may be, from my understanding of aerosol technologies and the likes, that's why you do that there. It's when it's under very, very high pressure. And it's because, again, it's not acting like a gas, it's acting like a liquid. That's why you get some kind of set that you could describe it as ordering of the gases, but it's not ordering of gases, it's ordering of liquids.
Well, exactly. So I want to reiterate that. In other words, in a normal setting, that would be nature. That does not occur. Now, that's not to say that you can't force it into that setting. A good example would that be hillbilly blue balls forcing butane into a pipe. But that doesn't change what happens naturally in nature. Now, entropy increase will still absolutely, without question, occur. In other words, come back a week later, there's nothing left in the pipe. It's all dissipated because there's gaps between it. Now, as Adam's pointing out, you can get gas to behave in certain ways if you force them together so there's no gaps, but that isn't how gas behaves in nature. Now, if you go up to a very high altitude, the mixtures, they're basically the same. Now, that's in flux generally. We're in dynamic systems, so it's not to say that you'll measure it at the top of Everest and go, well, look, there's a very slight variation in the amount of nitrogen. Well, yeah, that's because it's in flux. It's always changing. Everywhere, always. But as a basic general rule, as an oversimplification, it's the same exact stuff. There's just less of it because there's hardly any of it being created. But because there's gaps between it all just mixes up in pretty much the same way. It's an anisotropic, inhomogeneous mixture of gases. But when you go up high, it's not separating out into nitrogen and helium. That's not what's occurring.
And just to kind of add to that just a little bit, I mean, when you the vibrational rate of a particle, it's able to actually create bonds between other particles. So that's what creates things to condense, to create a liquid, to create a solid. But if the vibrational rate is high, it won't happen, or can't happen, or it'll be less likely to happen.
And that might be attributable to all sorts of different things. It might be the cause establishes that electrostatic forces causes that. Well, great. Let's establish it with science. Why does that happen? Why do we have phase changes? That's a phenomenon that we can study with science. So, wonderful. Some things are definitely within the remit of science. Now, if you want to establish the cause of those phase changes, more power to you. But in the meantime, the overriding idea that we have a downward bias is shattered by things going up. And the idea that they're losing energy as they go up, notwithstanding that you do have PV equals nRT, and you can calculate how much you're going to slow down, if you want to call it that, based on temperature. But we still have elastic collisions. The amount of force that they're going to apply to the container that they're in will change with the concentration because there's less particles pressing on the walls of the container. But their collisions are still elastic regardless of how low the concentration is, therefore the lower the pressure, higher up, where the gases aren't being created. Was that a succinct enough summary for this particular discussion? Anthony, Adam, Paul?
I think the only thing I'd add is the aerogel point is that all solids that we know of, there might be somewhat less dense than aerogel, but all solids that we know of are more dense than the medium. That's why there is the perception of a downward bias, but it's not. It's a perception only, subject to the human. The actual reason why they are separating is by virtue of their density, and we know that because we can manipulate it to prove it. Because if I change the medium, the density of the medium of the air around the aerogel would become the egg. That's what would happen. I don't know whether you can get a gas that's 6 times more dense than air, but if you could, that's what would happen because I demonstrated it.
Quick shout out to James Richard, who's going back on the conversation about half an hour, but nevertheless, all good. Becky is a pseudoscientist communicator. Sorry, I'll start that again. Becky is a pseudoscience communicator and up there with the best of them. Yeah, a reference to Mick West, who called himself a science communicator while he punted his mathematics and pseudoscience reifications of physical horizons blocking boats and buildings, now denied by fundies. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat, James Richard. And thank you, Anthony.
I was wondering if...
Go on, Paul. John, sorry.
I was wondering if... I work in construction a lot, and asbestos is something we run into, and when it becomes friable, it'll hang in the air for years on end in a closed system. Is that affected by Bob's downward bias?
When any gas is violating this idea of a downward bias, gas expands in all directions, and the collisions between it and the container and itself are elastic. So it's going up. As much as it's going down and bouncing off and going back up again, it's going in all directions. So this idea of a downward bias is essentially violated by gas, which doesn't have a downward bias.
Well, asbestos is a solid that hangs in the air.
Yeah, fibers.
Yeah, but what he's saying is, like dust, I suppose, when you shine the sun through your room, you'll see a load of dust particles suspended in the air, and they're solids, right? That's what he's saying. He's saying that asbestos is light enough to be suspended in the air for a very long period of time, and maybe the system we're in is dynamic enough to keep asbestos in the air for years, maybe. But it's a solid, he's saying, isn't going down. It's being suspended.
Can we address suspended, Nathan? It's not being suspended. It's being hit loads, isn't it? It's been subject to lots of collisions, which is why it doesn't go in a direction itself. Yeah, it's just subject to collisions. But suspension's a funny one, because suspension is more related to a fluid description.
That's just my poor. Okay, my bad in terms of my vernacular. The particles of air are hitting it, and it's becoming part of that description when we describe elastic collisions. Well, they also hit anything else that's in the air. Now, often it won't be the case that will make any difference to the path or vector of that particular piece of asbestos, but in this instance, there is small enough particles of asbestos that the elastic collisions with the gas that are in the air that we can't see keeps it suspended, correct?
Yeah. I was being anal.
Suspended, I use the word again. I totally ruined that by using the word suspended.
If the wind is not completely still, if there's airflow pressure differential, then that pressure differential will also carry the dust around, make it seem to float, but it's basically just doesn't get a chance to settle down perfectly. Because if you do the same setup in a perfectly isolated room, then eventually it will all go down to the bottom.
No, that's what he's saying.
No.
He's saying quite the contrary. He's saying even in a completely controlled circumstance, you'd still have asbestos with merely the elastic collisions of the gas keeping it in the air, i.e. not on the ground. I can't think of a word that's not suspended now, you bugger.
Over how much time was that tested?
FNet wouldn't it be a net force? You got net forces all around it, keeping it in that position.
Yeah. Well, the force of the gases banging into it is what Adam's saying. I just used the word suspended incorrectly, which makes it sound like it's either your egg in a solution, or it's just a wrong word.
That is the right word. It's me. But there is a distinction between the as Brian would say, the structural mechanics that's going off in terms of that suspension within air and liquid. It's a very different. There's this constant contact within a liquid as things flow over what you're suspending, whereas within the gas it's just constant, loads and loads. A good way of analogy is what Arwin said. It's not going in any, and I wouldn't necessarily vouch for it always staying up there, but within the dynamicness of the atmosphere, the air we breathe, just the air, it's going to keep moving, and the way in which it moves and it floats, and the way you see a feather float, is a good example to demonstrate the randomness of the collisions. So as this thing goes one way or the other, it's not going in any direction. Its direction is determined by the randomness of the collisions that hit that molecule, and that determines its direction, if you say.
Right. And there's another factor too in the whole play of forces in this case, and that is if it is a object that is extremely small, then like its surface area might be still relatively big. So the smaller it becomes, the surface area in relation to its netto density will become bigger relatively, the smaller it gets. And so because of its surface, it may still get the full blow, literally, of any gas pressure differential, of any pressure that happens, and thus it will have a tendency to stay afloat longer in relation to more solid, bigger objects that have more density in relation to their netto surface.
So a quick couple of shout outs to Retro Bill, who says, really enjoying this conversation. Thanks, guys. And I really appreciate your super chat. Thank you very much indeed, Retro Bill. Also, Desmond Hume, who says, members only, scared of public inquiry, eh? No, there's a link in the info box. You can join and express your views verbally, as opposed to spamming my chat with your rhetoric, which often doesn't get responded to by the people on the show. But if you did want to join, there's an after show that is going to follow now. So if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
so-called lower than the ones that are higher up above it with less surface area. We got it. It made so much sense. We didn't question it.
Because of
here's something.
price decrease, the vulnerability to outside forces in relation to its relative density disequilibrium force, because of its combined density, the smaller it becomes, the more subjectable it will be to basically friction-like effects. And thus it will keep small particles afloat a lot longer than bigger particles.
Well, here's something you can address. Let me help you address this issue with the slowing of the gas particles. That's why I said it when I said the way I said it. Is it the vibrational rate of the particle is slowing, or is it the directional velocity that is slowing?
Another quick shout out to Desmond Hume for hitting the super chat just as the show ended. Sorry.
Okay. Did anybody understand what I said?
Yeah, I got it. I got what you said.
So when you talk about it's losing kinetic energy, how? Is it losing its or directional velocity, or is it losing the vibrational rate?
The two are linked. The vibrational rate, then coupled with other molecular dynamics of it, they relate. Because when you're looking at ideal gas behavior, it's an admixture. Any individual gas will have its own value if you take it on its own. So it's an ideal. So they have their own slight variance, don't they? Even at the same temperature, they'll go at slightly different speeds.
Well, that would only work. That would only work inside a contained system, though, because the vibrational rate's going to increase the amount of rate of the velocity direction. But once that free particle is left and it's not colliding with anything else, its vibrational rate's not going to change its direction or velocity.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That'll be the gap where my knowledge ends in terms of how vibrational rate and kinetic speed, the actual speed of the molecule rate, and how those varies. But you're going into
it's like
look it up, Paul.
Well, here the thing about it. Here. Let me give you an analogy. A knuckleball.
You know
what a knuckleball is, right?
Yeah.
Okay. In a way, that ball is vibrating through the air, so to speak. It's moving in random ways. But if all of a sudden it's moving in a direction towards the player, as soon as you remove the atmosphere, the vibrational rate, the knuckleball stops, but the velocity and the direction does not stop. That's what I'm trying to analogize. That's what I'm trying to describe.
You see, that sounds like you're applying Newtonian mechanics to a particle, which doesn't work to me.
I know, but see that you're right, because you have also the way they have to act in a quantum state at the same time. That's another issue altogether. But I'm just saying is if they're going to apply Newtonian principles, elastic collisions, you have to think of it the way I'm describing it. If not, it falls apart.
I'll have a look at the links between that vibrational state. There is a link, and I think, but I'd have to look to speak a little bit more on it in terms of it. But I'm pretty sure that's the two are linked in that way. It's the vibrational thing that translates into kinetic speed, the kinetic energy speed.
Well, the kinetic energy is the vibration rate, but I'm talking about direction and velocity. You're going to have to show that the vibrational rate will slow the direction and velocity. That's what you're going to have to show.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'd have to get a citate to go and look it up, because off the top of my head, it's a long time ago. That level of detail, if you know what I mean. That's the crap you try and forget as soon as you don't have to cite it and remember it anymore.
Well, I've had to look at it because of the way the arguments have gone in Discord because of the ballers. So that's the reason I'm even thinking this way, even because I've had to go all the way back into research, like what causes the vibration of a particle with the photon interacting and knocking, the electron into a different, whatever shell you want to call it, and it's increasing the energetic state of the particle, that kind of thing.
So, Paul, are you saying basically the obvious, which is the momentum and the direction are caused by the excitement and the vibration caused by the sun in this case, or heat, and when they hit each other, it's a random direction?
Well, imagine Well, when a photon hits the electron or hits the gas particle, it energizes it and it starts to vibrate. Imagine it like it's vibrating energetically. Well, that's going to energetically connect with other particles, and that creates the randomness that everything starts to move in, creating the so-called gas, creates the gas pressure, is that excitation of those particles.
That GIF image that you had where you increase the heat open the top.
Right, but once that gas particle has not lost the heat, it hasn't lost its energetics. I guess it hasn't lost its velocity and direction. It just escapes and can't collide with anything else. It's gone.
Well, as long as it's inside that container that you showed, it's hitting off the walls. But once you open up the top and have an avenue of escape, then it escaped.
Right. But it's not colliding with anything else. Now, it might lose the photon. It might lose some heat. Well, it probably does lose some heat, but its direction of velocity does not change if it's Newtonian physics that are in play. But so when you look at molecular theory, it uses Newtonian principles, which that's another discussion for another day.
I have a trick question for you guys in relation to what we talked about earlier about particles and all that.
Feel free.
It's a classic one. I'm trying to reformulate it. What falls faster in regular air? A kilogram of feathers or a kilogram of rock? And yes, it is a trick question.
Probably the rock, because the surface area of the feathers, presumably in a bag, would be greater and create a greater resistance in the air. So I would say the rock probably.
You got it. But you're supposed to answer the question with how compact are the feathers? Because if it is like airtight, wrapped perfectly still, then then it might get pretty close. But if it's basically
pretty close, but I'd still say
it's all gonna go very slow.
Even if you compacted it together. Now this is a weird one. Now because I was doing the acoustic treatment in this room, I've got some shelves and I filled them with duck feathers. Now when I researched it, they obviously did literally some lab testing on how well feathers, chicken feathers in that example, were good as sound absorption. Now they obviously formed it in various different ways. One of them was compacting it together really tightly to see how that would work. Now it just so happens that they had pictures of that and it still had rough edges, not like rock would have rough edges, as in stuff that would still catch the air if it was falling. I know this is getting really specific, but I'd still say that rock would win every time, because no matter what, just pushing it through the air would make some of the feathers fray off and cause more resistance, I would say, in the kilogram equal size of feathers versus rock. So I'm going to say feathers will always hit second. That would be my argument for even if you compacted it together. There you go.
You would probably win on that every time anyhow, because I think the average density of feathers, even when perfectly compacted and plastic vacuum wrapped and all that, is still going to be lower than rock. So the disequilibrium will always be higher for the rock than for the feathers, despite any friction situation. But yeah,
it'd be cool if you got three different types. You got the feathers that were densely compact, you got the feathers that were loosely compact, and then you got the rock. Dropped all three out of a plane at the highest altitude you could get and see which one hit the ground first. And we all know which one's going to hit the ground first. Be interesting to see what the differential between the other two, though, the feathers that are squashed and the feathers that are not so squashed, what the differential between them two would be.
What about if you changed feathers to asbestos? What would happen then?
The fibers of asbestos.
I'm just joking. I'm being absurd.
Let's not do that. I don't think that's legal. It's
not legal? What, I'm going to get arrested for descending this into absurdity?
Well, no, but by releasing asbestos fibers out in the open just to do an experiment.
This isn't on the really is level. Nobody mentioned the word experiment.
Fiberglass. Well, I was keeping the option open with the feathers and the rock. Like, you could test this at home or outside.
Just whoever said that, fiberglass is just as bad. The problem is, because as a foreign body, it doesn't. You can't excrete it, so it just gets into your lungs, and your lungs will just see it and form a layer over the top of it, and it'll just stay there. Same in your skin, that's why it's itchy. Now, at least with your skin, as it sheds, it can actually eventually get it out, but in the meantime, it itches like hell. So that's, again, I only know this from studying the acoustics of the room and the various materials that they use. And that's not something I wanted in the panels that I've got on my walls. I wanted very much to know that if one of them fell off the wall and smashed into pieces, that all the fibres that went in the air were very much natural fibres, and therefore wouldn't be non-rejectable from me or my kids should the worst happen. Well, it might seem like, oh, well, who cares? Well, I care, because I don't want horrible man-made fibres stuck in my lungs that won't ever be rejected. That sounds like a very bad thing to me. So no, fiberglass, no, it's the same principle as with asbestos, which is why asbestos has been made illegal.
Right, don't do it with fiberglass either. I hate that stuff.
Well, it's exactly the same. It's like the replacement for asbestos. That's all they've done. But it's the same problem with the man-made fibres. There's no difference. But, they get around regulations in those ways. It's just the world we live in. I'm not going to moan about it. That's just how life is, right?
Yep.
Something else to ban in 2025 or 2019, 2029 or whenever. Well, suddenly all of these non-eco-friendly materials that everyone's got stuffing up their walls, well, you're going to have to rip them all out. Well, that'll stimulate a lot of building work and so on and so forth, won't it?
Well, don't get rid of fiberglass. We got boats in the water when fiberglass was first introduced to boating, and they're still floating.
Yeah, but they can't make that of anything else. And it's not just, it's fiberglass and resin. So it's not loose fibers. It's part of the structure.
Right.
Not the same as loose fiberglass, which when blown up or broken open can still float around and get in people's lungs.
It's the same stuff, Arwin. If you smash into the side of a boat, the same principle applies. As the fibers break, the same principle.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, it's the same stuff.
If they catch fire, the resin burns off, but the glass fibers are still there.
Don't they melt?
No, well, not at the temperatures that the resin burns off at.
Anyway, fascinating though this is. Started off with asbestos being a joke if you compacted it and dropped it, like feathers being compacted and compared in the air to rock being dropped. And here we are discussing the the supremacy in fire safety terms of man-made materials. Fascinating subject this is. Welcome to Fire Debate.
We'll have to drop a rock. We'll have to drop a rock and a surfboard with resin, and then just fiberglass without resin, and see what hits first.
No, let's not do that.
Or we could just put them all in a medium where they all get very close to neutral buoyancy and change the medium and see which one moves first. That would be an equivalent way of dealing with it.
Tony?
Yo.
I replicated your test and got exactly the same results as you. But what I did do also is looked how many elements there were lighter than air. And some searches said 7 elements lighter than air. Some said 11. I'm not overly sure how many, but there are elements lighter than air.
Yeah.
The only reason we don't see them going upwards is because they're transparent.
Well, I said solids, though. I didn't say elements. You replaced my word solid with elements.
No, but
air is
he's agreeing with you.
Different elements. It's not an element.
He's not disagreeing with you. He's just expanding on your point. He's not in any way disagreeing with you. Correct, Brian?
Yeah, exactly that. But Bob goes on about everything goes down, goes boom, boom. But there are at least 7, if not 11 more elements that leave swamps, the earth, everywhere else that travel upwards every day of the week that we just don't visualize because they're transparent.
Yeah, because you can check that out by looking at the density maps. Look at the density gradient tables that tell you the density of all the objects or all the things, and there's a load of them that's more dense than air. Less dense than air.
Don't be confused. Hold on. I just want 2 corrections. 1, don't be confused. Because we're in a dynamic system, the gases we experience are still anisotropic and inhomogeneous. So it's not the case that because those gases which cycle dynamically, it doesn't mean we've got a layer of them. That doesn't occur either. 1 more correction. Bob Nodell does not say gas go down, go boom, boom. That's Thunderfoot Clown. Just don't attribute that nonsense of gas go down, go boom, boom, like bouncy balls poured into a fish tank. That's Thunderfoot Clown, not Bob.
Right, Bob has a downward bias, and if I may for a second, I used to say downward bias is for the dense. I got an update. Downward bias is not just for the dense; it's also for the opaque.
Bob attacks you on that gas pressure go down, go boom, boom. He doesn't like the verbiage, so he ridicules it rather than addresses it.
Good, because it's not our quote. It's what Thunderfoot said when he poured bouncy balls into a fish tank and went boom. That's literally what he said.
Notice that my response to Bob wasn't personal. It was on topic at all times.
But yeah, maybe that's something that needs clearing up. If it was assumed that that's being attributed to Bob and it was just by Brian and I corrected him. It's not. That's gas go down, go boom, boom, like bouncy balls poured into a fish tank, as asserted by Thunderfoot Clown. Now, the fact that we have people on the flat earth side that assert there's a downward bias, now that's a very similar argument, if not the same argument, as gas go down, go boom, boom, which is made by Thunderfoot Clown when asserting gravity. Now, coincidentally, strangely enough, they also call it gravity, which is a bit weird, but there we go, that's nothing I can explain, it's not my argument. On either side, I don't say gas go down, go boom, boom, it doesn't.
Right, because they're two different mistakes. One mistake is attributing an ability to gas, which is unproven, it doesn't happen. And the other is the reification of an effect, which is not present, not provable scientifically. A force field that cannot be measured, and it's supposedly insignificant. So it's very different types of mistakes.
By me.
Right?
Again, Brian?
Mistakes by me, was he saying?
No. You can juxtapose the two. I'm just saying that don't attribute the actual statement to Bob, because he didn't say, and there you go, boom, like Thunderfoot did, when showing that gas can go down. Here's bouncy balls poured into a fish tank. So the boom boom originally started with go down, go boom boom, which was what Quantum Eraser would say when describing how they describe things going down always on the globe side. But then literally Thunderfoot Clown poured bouncy balls into a fish tank and boom! End quote. Flat Earth destroyed, or whatever he said next. But my point is that gas go down, go boom boom, like bouncy balls poured into a fish tank, is very specifically Thunderfoot asserting gravity when showing how gas behaviour is. Because they need gas to go down, go boom boom. Now, in the case of flat earthers who assert this, they just seem to, at least Witsit, and from what I glean of the people telling me, ignore the fact that this bias has no bias with gas. The thing that's defeating it. So I don't know if it's whistling past the graveyard or what, because in some instances, when Rumpus came in and started to attribute the reality of asserting that things have a downward bias to Witsit with gas, he then declared to Rumpus, no, I don't believe that. I understand that gas has entropy and it's expanding in all directions. It's like, so you do understand this, then it is definitely cognitive dissonance to assert a bias, but that's what cognitive dissonance is all about. Hence, I don't know, Friday's show, I told the detractors, the people who are very negative towards Nathan and Witsit, that there's no need. You know, this is very, very strong programming when it comes to gravity, and what do you know? We've got a similar argument with a similar title about gravity with downward vectors that are violated by gas, leaving the people arguing it in a state of cognitive dissonance. Not shills, not controlled opposition, just people. And it kind of gets infuriating when we are starting this discussion, going, good, we're discussing it, for it to descend into the people on the sidelines going, look, they're shills, Nathan Thompson said, rah, 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 and wants to discuss it, wants an argument about it. It's like, yeah, so do we. Does that make us shills? No, we're just on the winning side of the argument. Does that make him a shill equally? No. So, you know, just lay off. The people who are willing to come and actually discuss it in the ring of fire, I might add, you know, kudos to Witsit. He knows what he's going to get if he comes here, or I assume he does, unless he's stupid. I don't think he's that stupid, you know, to come in and not realise that if you've got a fundy belief, it's going to get attacked with as much vitriol as anything else that's a fundy belief. But he'd still stepped in the ring, right? He's here discussing it. That needs commending in the same way as Bob needs commending, because he's discussing it too. And he's allowing us to critique it, going back and forth. Now, there might be some minor personal attacks that are still there, and inadvertently Anthony may not realise by saying, oh, well, I'm not putting any personal attacks in there. It's like, there's the lingering personal attack, though, coming to the surface. Now, I'm not going to highlight it too much before Anthony pounces on that. I'm just saying things are getting discussed. It's all good. Now, Whitsit will get my admiration. He's got my admiration on Ballbusters, and that absolutely still stands. You know, he annihilated Jam Pender to the point where we spent an entire show praising him for it. Well, as much as I say I lost a bit of respect for him, that was in the moment. Take it back. You know, Whitsit's still a good guy. So is Nathan Thompson. The fact that they're willing to discuss it with somebody who's as abrasive in some instances as myself, you need a bit of praise, for God's sake. Don't just call him out of shills. Talk about kicking a man when he's down.
You're a shill too, Nathan, because you're defending them. And obviously they made a mistake. And once you make a mistake ever, you're henceforth known as a shill.
Defending them? I'd stand side by side with them. So, yeah, I will defend them.
That's
Just
exactly
kidding.
what a shill would say.
Said the shill, who would definitely say that if he was a shill. Whatever.
You were a bit rough on Whitsit, though.
Yeah, as he deserved.
Actually, I don't think he was too rough on Whitsit. I think that Whitsit got what he deserved because he basically pushes nonsense in that respect.
Right.
Hey,
Good morning or afternoon, Quantum Eraser.
Hey, Brian.
And hey, Brian.
I think it was just a point of the pressure had to blow, Nathan. You can't keep on listening to the same argument that's not been backed up, especially from people on our side, and not eventually get stressed out by it. It's very simple. Support the claim. Or concede you can't. It's that simple. And they are not conceding. No,
carry on.
That's the problem.
Carry on pushing it to newbies that might be influenced by perception instead. That's an alternative too.
Well, that's a problem, exactly. You can't be doing that. That's the point of what we do.
Yeah, just in the interest of balance, Brian, they can do whatever the hell they like. And as much as it being frustrating to you, I actually am not in the slightest bit frustrated by this because I don't subject myself to it on the whole. And when it comes to me, I'll deal with it in the moment. But this absolutely does not stress me out. And it shouldn't stress you out either. If it does, detach yourself from it immediately, you know, because it's not good for you.
Well, it's not something that, like, I mean, it doesn't stress me out outside of it. But when I keep hearing it, it's like, it's look, if I walk into a housing estate in England and I start making a load of big claims and then I don't support them, do I lose my credibility? Yes. Just if I go into a military situation, make a load of big claims and I don't support them, I lose my credibility. Go into a business meeting and make a load of big claims and don't support them, I lose my credibility. Why should this be any different?
It isn't.
Not attacking you, Nathan. Just saying.
It isn't. When they came, if you want to say they, I'm going to bundle Whitsit Nathan and call it they. Sorry, guys, just the way it is in this convo. They have come here, presented it to us, or me in this instance, you were here, and it got taken to pieces, the same as anybody else who comes here. But beyond us dealing with it in, let's call this our bar, right? Well, then who cares? If they want to deal with it in their way, in their circles, you know, it's their meeting to lose the respect of their clients around their table. Now, if you happen to be in the auditorium above looking down on it, going, you know, I want to throw tomatoes at this meeting because the investors might invest, it's like, well, just leave the auditorium. You don't have to look down on it. You know, just don't look.
Yeah. And also, I don't think that...
Fair point.
I think there's a difference between getting something wrong and losing credibility because we all make mistakes. And I think that the way you deal with the... You know, like if you get something wrong, I mean, I've got stuff wrong in the past.
Wow, lots of stuff. Speak for yourself, though.
I think the key point is that if you deal with it properly and say, do you know what, maybe I did get that wrong. I mean, I did the wrong folk court video on a Friday night one time and it was a bit late. I was drunk. But if you realize that you've made a mistake and move on from it and accept that you made a mistake, you don't lose credibility there. Where you do lose credibility is where you get told that you're wrong and then continue pushing that bullshit anyway.
So, QE, we had an interesting conversation earlier on the show. I don't know if you're watching, probably not. Probably tucked up nicely in bed after lots of Christmas dinner. But the elastic collision...
Birthday dinner.
Say again?
Birthday dinner.
Birthday dinner as well, yes, indeed. Happy birthday to you for a few days ago.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
21 again, eh?
Yeah, indeed. Forever young.
Go ahead, Nathan, before we get rumpused again.
I've completely forgotten what I was going to talk about now.
Oh, you had a conversation earlier?
Oh, we had a conversation earlier, and that hasn't really helped me remember, but if I waffle a little bit for a while, I might be able to remember.
Presentation, Bob Nodell.
Oh, I can't remember. No, it was about elastic collisions. I have remembered. So, Anthony was pointing out that the importance of elastic collisions came to him a couple of weeks ago when Adam discussed the subject. And he was like, I didn't know anything about this prior to then. And I was like, yeah, you did. Every single presentation ever about how you can have gas pressure without a container has had the detailed explanation of elastic collisions. And I even referenced, so that Anthony remembered it definitely was there, the 3 different states where you've got the animated GIFs of solid, liquid and gas. And that's when you talk about elastic collisions and have them on, I'm going to say, at least half a dozen occasions. It's probably much, much, much more.
I don't think I went into. I probably just brushed over them. Yeah, now the phone starts to go off. Punk. I don't think I got into it specifically a whole bunch of times. I brushed over it indirectly, but it has been gone over many times. Yes.
But the point that I want to make there is that sometimes you can be told stuff 5-10 times before you realise that it's important. And I can admit that I didn't realise the importance of it until it became apparent very recently. And I was like, oh shit, that's why that becomes. And then it went in. But we're all on our journey, right? And bits go in at different times at different rates for everybody. And now I get it.
Yeah. And sometimes people on that journey are in chat conversating with everyone else and not paying attention to the presentation.
Yeah, I was one of them.
I wasn't going to mention any
that was
names
me.
or anything.
Yeah, that was me. Well, no, hold on. Just because when Anthony was watching your presentations in recent years, I was that guy when you were doing them on Cathexis channel 4 or 5 years ago. I was in chat talking shit. I was that exact same guy. And then when you came to me with all of the things that I'd definitely already watched and thought, wow, that was cool, for about 10 seconds before telling someone they were a fundy in chat or whatever, those things you went through with me. And just to back up what Anthony's just said, I even specifically said this to you when we were going through them 1-to-1. Yeah, now tell me 9 more times. Now tell me 8 more times. Yeah. Because although, I could parrot back the concept that you just told me, probably verbatim after the second time, it's not that. It's the understanding of the significance is the reason why I was like, no, tell me 9 more times. And I know it's irritating, but I still need it 7 more times for me. And by the time you've had it the 10th time, you go, right, that's really important. I'm glad the Black Swan comes up because I explained this by example to Anthony on a call this morning with the Black Swan. So you and I were discussing the Black Swan in 2019 prior to its release to the public. And you'd put it to me in various different ways. And it was discussed, right, at length. But then when you finally put it into modus tollens and formatted it in the way that's now been released to the public with the image itself, you presented that to me, and I was like, do you know how important this is? It's like, you're the one who's been formulated for the last bloody 2 weeks or whatever, But suddenly the significance dawned on me, even though we've been discussing it for a very long time, because it had been trickled in. If I'm correct, initially, I even said I didn't like it. When you phrased it off the back of Ben's presentation, I'm like, I really don't like this, because all I could focus on was the idea of pumping up an Earth to the size that Ben had exampled. And you're like, no, you're just not getting it. The horizon can't be beyond that. And I'm like, yeah, but that's how it works in the example. And it was only when you went, well, if the Earth's a sphere with this radius, then every distance to the horizon, and this is the bit that sticks in my mind, can be no more than 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. So when you hear that and you go, it can't be beyond that. It's beyond the physical limits. That was the point that I'm like, do you see the significance? It's like, of course you do. You're the one who developed the bloody argument.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, on a couple notes, this is a serious level of white knighting for Anthony. I hope you appreciate that, Anthony, because this is next level white knighting. Number 2, it's not just understanding the significance, it's understanding the argument, the details underneath that support it, and then its significance. That's what I'd like to say.
No, I can give a perfect example of that. So a couple of weeks after the Black Swan comes out, I understand the significance, but I don't understand the importance of the argument behind it. For example, I present QE with a picture of a non-refracted crane image with the horizon, probably in excess of the original Black Swan, and go, can't we just present this image? Because if we present this image, they won't go on about refraction. And with a wry smile, not that I could see him, QE says, I want them to say refraction, because that is the death nail of the argument. Now, that demonstrates that I didn't really understand I understood the premise of the argument, but I didn't understand the mechanics of the argument. And when it was pointed out to me with a wry smile, no, I want them to say refraction. Well, why would you want them to say refraction? Well, because there's the paradox. You know, there's the death of their needing it. Al-Biruni's measuring a physical horizon. They're claiming boats and buildings are blocked by its physicality. As soon as it's refracted, it's not physical anymore.
Yeah.
Where was the white knighting, John? I missed it.
Nathan just spent the last 5 minutes white knighting for you.
Oh.
You missed it.
I was on about yours. I saw it with Nathan.
You're probably in chat, right?
Shout out to you.
Too funny. Yeah.
Yep. What?
So
no comment.
Anybody else get any snow overnight? We got loads of snow.
You got loads of snow, huh?
We actually had a white Christmas where I'm at. We had a white day.
It's always white where I'm at.
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often here. We got like 3 inches where I'm at, and it's lasted until 27th.
It's always white where you're at. What are you, coke dealer?
Why is your mind thinking that? I live upstate New York.
Before this conversation descends, so on Christmas Eve, snowflakes fell. So I went outside to put the bins out, and there's a few people mustering around. I was like, hey, look, snowing. And they're like, yep. So although we wouldn't class that as a white Christmas, there's a standard. The Met Office has to have a certain amount of snow fall on the top of it for England to declare a white Christmas. But we definitely didn't have that. But I had snowflakes on Christmas Eve, which I was very pleased about.
Oh, you're lucky. We didn't get much here. But that's cool. Yeah. What other weather phenomena you want to talk about?
30 minutes into the hangout, John, is the presentation. I want you to just give me some feedback on and see what you think.
Okay.
Obviously, it's been and gone now, but it's a good presentation because some of Bob's things were just like fucking idiot. I didn't address him personally. Yeah, I didn't address him personally. I just addressed his points. But I pulled them apart.
And what points were those?
Well, he said, I'll read you what he said. He said, after a while, he's talking about he thinks that the collisions between the molecules are non-elastic and that they lose momentum. He says, after a while, what will happen is the gas collisions will eventually begin to become less violent as the energy is depleted out of that initial energy transfer, and the gas will begin to settle before taking on a density gradient bottom first. So he was emphasizing the density gradient caused by the loss of momentum from the non-elastic collisions that he thinks are there. Then he said there was a downward vector, and it can be proven there is a downward vector. I pulled that apart with using aerogel and showing how aerogel is 6 times more dense than the medium of air, and it's the lightest known substance according to science. So all objects with
science,
according to technology, maybe then.
Why, science is a survey, now?
No, shut up.
I'll give him a break. Give him a break. Give him a break.
Anyway, I was using aerogel to show that the lightest known solid that we have is aerogel, and that's 6 times more dense than the air. So that's where the perception comes from, and he calls it downward. So obviously, I went into relative directions. And then the last thing he said was, it is obvious to me that there is an absolute up and down. They are not relative directions unless you are a ball earther and subscribe to Einstein's relativity. Up and down are absolutes.
Oh my God.
No. Up and down are absolutes. There's no way around it.
Stop. Please stop. I don't want to hear anymore.
It's worth going back and listening to because he just gets destroyed. I also have him on screen as well, just to, even though it's not personal, just to make it personal, but without having the dig.
So I guess I know where the elastic subject came from. Elastic collisions.
Yeah, it came from, well, it crystallized from Meekin.
No, it's incoherent dielectric magnetism.
Where gases fall down to the ground and shit, right?
Go down,
go down, go boom, boom, go splash, splash.
Oh yeah, that's what he was focusing on. He hates that vernacular, that verbiage. He hates it. It's probably because he didn't come up with it himself.
Sorry about that. Are we still on gases?
Yeah, just talking about how Bob hates the verbiage of gas pressure, go down, go boom, boom. He hates it probably because he hadn't thought of it himself.
This isn't personal,
Not because it's
and
a bad analogy.
This isn't personal, and Anthony's not divining his thoughts.
It's not personal, but I'll put a big picture of him on screen and make it personal.
I don't know why we're tiptoeing around this issue. I'm not going to tiptoe around it anymore. My mission when I came out here was very simple. Expose pretender clowns. It had no bias, no pun intended. It was just to expose pretender clowns. I am not. I see a red sash. I pummeled a man that's wearing it.
Why
so
does
look
red
out.
trigger you like a bull?
I totally agree.
So you guys better stay in your fucking echo chambers,
No
okay?
swearing.
Because I've just about fucking had it.
No swearing.
I'm just about to the point where there's no fucking talking to me, okay? I'm already there, so.
Come on, stop fucking swearing.
Stop swearing.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Can you beep those out?
No. That's
no, because then we wouldn't be able to hear the rest of you talking because it'd be continuous beeps.
It just means I've got to disclaim that now.
Yeah,
so,
sorry about that. I got a little hyped up there. I'm just frustrated.
Okay, upon uploading, I've just got to tell YouTube that there's swearing in it. That's all. And you know, it wasn't like Unitox spammer ruined that.
Right, it's given me. You know what it does to me because I review them. Right, this is just back office stuff, but it's real short. So where the spot where it says review and there's just light swearing and stuff. Some bitches said that I didn't assess those correctly, like the last 10. There's.
Well, yeah, but you're supposed to. Because you want to be in good standing. Well, I want to be in good standing with YouTube, and I tend to get it right. And I get little notes from YouTube that says, "Well done, Nathan. You've correctly identified that people can't adhere to the rule, including you, and you declare that when you upload it." So I get little notes with a little balloon that say, "Well done. You've done well."
I get all the friggin' dead buzzards. Right? Not the balloons. They send a dead buzzard and said, "You didn't assess this right. We ain't trusting you."
Fair enough. No, I'm very careful.
Yeah.
Go on.
Sorry about that. I'll try to. I know better than that. I just got a little frustrated. Sorry.
No, I'm getting lectured about it too, so I'm just as bad. And 10th man's quick to tell me. So.
I have
I would just like to say that. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, Brian.
No, I'm just saying that my point stands. I'm not playing any more games. I'm just not going to do it.
This is completely off topic, but let me say
it's not off topic. It's right on topic.
No, this is. Shut up. You know that Tiffany Dover death that's not a death that might be a death?
Oh,
she appears on Ancestry as a death.
Oh,
it was like, how do you end up on Ancestry if you haven't died?
Do I have to listen to this conspiracy crap? Really? You're going to poison the end of my show with this
I'm just telling anyone
nonsense?
that's interested.
Oh, God.
You told me to shut up to present that.
Yeah, it was in the forefront of my mind. It was the most important thing in the whole entire word at that moment.
Out of my mind.
Yeah.
You just had to get it out, right?
Yeah. It was like a sneeze. It just has to come out there and then.
Are you intentionally diverting away from the topic?
No. Sorry, carry on.
I'd like to say that.
Brian, go ahead.
There'd be a bunch more swear words.
Oh, please, Brian, save us. Go ahead.
Okay. A big problem on their side, and this is on topic, not personal attacks. A big problem on their side seems to be the understanding of why a helium balloon goes down in a vacuum chamber. There's two reasons why that. Yeah, that's the number one reason. There's no medium. The helium has no reason to try and fight against any other gases, as there is no other gases. And the helium is contained inside a balloon, and the material of the balloon is more dense than the helium. The only reason it goes up when it's in air is because it has all those other gases more dense and higher pressure around it. So it goes up.
No, hold on. Hold on.
Electrostatics.
Brian, do you want a much more consistent or quick way to deal with that, right? So our argument is gas expands in all directions to fill the availability of volume it has to fill.
I know, bust the balloon and fill the chamber.
Exactly. So what's happening in the balloon?
That's what I was getting at.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Fair enough. My bad.
Go on, you say it, though, Nathan. You say it. You have.
Exactly. The balloon itself just becomes the container. So, okay, inside the balloon, all of the helium is expanded inside that container equally in all directions. Now, were the pressure on the outside of the balloon inside the vacuum chamber to be depleted to the point where there's not enough pressure for the tensile strength of the balloon to contain the gas, which is expanding in all directions inside the containment of the balloon, there's not a pool at the bottom of the balloon, otherwise it would be fatter at the bottom and thinner at the top. Now that doesn't happen. But upon it breaching that container, the balloon, it will then do exactly the same thing in the vacuum chamber, which is fill it equally in all directions. So the balloon's filled equally in directions, it's given the containment required to demonstrate that the gas is going in all directions. But they want to take the container within the container and say, look, my container in this container goes down. Well, so what? The gas inside it, which is our example, has expanded into its containment, the balloon, equally in all directions.
There is a video, though, where the balloon doesn't burst.
No, that's why the balloon has its shape.
So, okay, so there's an example where not enough gas is evacuated or the tensile strength is high enough to contain all of the gas. Well, it's all contained within a container. That's called a balloon. Regardless of what's on the exterior of the balloon, inside that container, the gas has filled it equally in all directions. So the gas behaviour is still violating the downward vector within the containment of the balloon.
So is your container solid? Wondering.
Forget about the container. The gas inside the balloon is still expanded into the balloon equally in all directions, no downward bias.
I know, but the solid is going down. So it's a solid.
Right. Genuine question. Meekin, are you there?
Yeah.
John?
Yeah.
Does there come a saturation point where if you keep pouring more and more gas into a container, there comes a point where it does start to not pool at the bottom, but does it create a pool at the bottom in the medium? Or is it always homogeneous when it's one gas in one container?
No. The pooling at the bottom is a pooling of liquid. So the gas pressure inside the container has become so much that some molecules are forced together so much. Yeah. Now the gas pressure above will sit above that pool in equilibrium based on the pressure and the molecules. So that'll sit. But you'll get any pooling that you get will only occur in a different phase when it's in its liquid phase. Yeah. As soon as it translates back to being a gas, then it translates back to being a gas and behaves like a gas again, which is freely moving in all directions. Even though that space is limited, it's still freely moving. It's only when it's compressed so much that it's starting to behave like a liquid, where the molecules are just sliding over each other instead of hitting each other, that it will pull. Because at that point, you've got a liquid. Well, it's subject to relative density disequilibrium, so it's going to go to the bottom of the container.
LPG.
As it's falling in its liquid state, any bits that transition, any latent heat that comes off from that liquid, that gas molecule won't continue to fall. It will just go off in the direction that its point of transition was.
Why are people struggling with this? I don't get it.
They were indoctrinated to believe that there's a downward bias in the form of a gravitational attraction, then bending of space-time, both called gravity. Now there's a new kid on the block, flat Earth gravity. Well, the fact that the indoctrination runs deep is, as I said on the live show, or maybe in the after show, I forget which, not something that's like indictable. Is that the right word? Forgivable, right? Just discuss it, point out how it's nonsense, explain that gas violates that, regardless of if you put the container in a container or not. Gas will expand to fill the volume, regardless of if it's a balloon that's the volume it's filling, or if it breaches the balloon's containment, not strong enough, then it'll just be the chamber that it's in. And what do you know, if it was the case that that was a really thin plexiglass chamber and the gas pressure happened to be strong enough to evacuate through that because it caused a crack, then it would fill whatever containment it was in after that, and so on and so forth. It'll just fill whatever volume it's got to fill. That's what gas does, regardless if the container's a balloon, a vacuum chamber. Now, in our atmosphere, they're never close enough together to gradiate. It's inhomogeneous, or homogeneous, as some people say it, means that it's like in harmony. Right? That doesn't happen. It's all mixed up. Because there's gaps between it. That's why. It's just that simple. And all of the gases, regardless of how dense they are, when you collapse them down or push them close together, they're all doing the same thing. Expanding out in all directions at high velocity. That's all they're doing.
On the Zachary Zabala show with Bob on it there in the past couple of days, Bob Nodell admits that this happens. That if you bust a balloon, that it would fill the available volume. Now, he says it in a kind of a tongue-in-cheek, kind of a sarcastic way, more speaking about how it's said on the show here. So he didn't give it respect. Like, he didn't give it respect. It was more of a half an attack on yourself, I think, actually, Nathan. But he did say it does happen. He can't deny that happens. What I have found is happening on their side is one of the arguments I made against their electrostatics was the fact that this thing does happen within canisters where must be some phase change happening towards the bottom of canisters with different gases in it of different molecular weights, and what's happening is the denser is always towards the bottom. When the gas canister is left to sit there at a constant temperature in a factory for whatever length of time. Right? But the thing about it is that there was no talk about this on their side whatsoever, and now they're using this as a proof of electrostatics. I've heard it 2 or 3 times now out of them. And I think it was on the Zachary Zabala show there a few nights ago that Anthony shared that Bob is actually speaking, and he does speak about this. So now they're using this exact thing as proof of electrostatic downward bias or whatever.
Sure. Well,
it's just phase changes.
Okay, well, these, you can call them idealized or man-made or forced or whatever you like. These circumstances aren't what happens in nature. And that's what we're talking about when you apply these. Well, it's happening like this in this controlled circumstance. Therefore, nature behaves like... No, it doesn't. Nature adheres to natural law. Entropy increase will always occur. Now, Adam's twice on this show gone over this in terms of how high-pressure gases, which arbitrarily get described as fluids, right? We're talking about the dynamics of fluids. Correct, Adam? Well, this is something that I often mix up in terms of my vernacular or my incorrect English when I say liquids versus fluids. Well, your fluid dynamics are applicable under certain circumstances that aren't how gas behaves in nature. So you can go down this road and be correct. Anthony and I had this discussion this morning, but Anthony was quick to point out to me that it's not on topic, it's not relevant. It doesn't matter what how you can force a gas to behave and what you can attribute to it, because we're talking about how nature behaves. So, in terms of how nature behaves, laws of nature apply.
The fluid dynamics, when we're talking about gases, even when they're talking about gases in the air and weather systems and that, they talk about they're still discussing at fundamental level diffusion as one thing goes into another, both liquids and gases. But as you can understand, the different way in which liquids and gases are composed, that's a wholly different way in which the two things diffuse. Liquids are a physical contact, and whereas diffusion within a gas is is determined by that random collision again. It's intermixing of diffusion slowly, backwards and forwards in the continent. It's a very different type of diffusion, but they would still use that description, Nathan. But with that fundamental understanding, it's of the difference in the two actual dynamics of the systems.
Brian, are you there?
Yes, Anthony, yes.
Let me just correct you on some of what you said about Bob. He did say if you have a container and bleed all the gas into it, it would go into the container and fill the volume. He did say that, but the bit you missed off is the most important bit that he says. He goes on to say, after a while, what will happen is the gas collisions will eventually begin to slow, become less violent as that energy is depleted out of that initial energy transfer, and the gas will begin to settle and start taking on a density gradient bottom first. But he emphasizes the bottom first. Now what he's doing there is he's focusing on the density gradient bottom first, but he's attributing it to a loss of momentum caused by the collisions. But if he doesn't realize that the collisions are elastic and there is no net loss of energy, so he's saying that there is a net loss of energy, and that's the cause of the gradient, but that's not the cause of the gradient. So he's incorrect. So that was what I corrected him on him. If you go back to 30 minutes into the live hangout today, you'll see me deal with that point directly.
I'm going to. No, I didn't miss any of that. No, I'm just making the point to Nathan that he does actually admit that does happen. Oh, I know about that. I know about the elastic collisions. Yeah,
he admits that happens, but it's only a precursor to his next point, which is he's relying on the density gradient that he calls it at the bottom to be caused by the loss of momentum because the collisions are non-elastic.
Hold on.
So although
what's happening?
He's then using that to support his future
we heard it
point.
twice, please. So we've heard the false comparison. So in terms of what we have in nature, you have gas created at ground level dissipating as they go up. Less of it created in the sky than there is on the ground, therefore less of it up high than there is down low. That's your pressure gradient, right? Not the mixture of gases or anything else before anybody distracts with that red herring. Now, you've then got it being compared, by example, to gas being injected into containment, and then saying that over time, that will form a homogeneous layer. No, it won't. The gas will just completely stay in that chamber that's sealed and just bounce around indefinitely. So in terms of your, like the example that guy does, I've forgotten the name of him, and he's got bromine in one chamber and an empty vacuum in the other. He releases the bromine into the two chambers. Now, assuming that we have perfect seals, which you wouldn't have, in that apparatus, then essentially it will just stay like that. It's not like you leave it, come back a year later and, oh, look, all the bromine settled on the bottom. No. It just remains a gas.
Can I just? This is the
but we are in a container.
I want to address on this with regards to this. So the claim is that there is an acting downward force which causes a decrease in the kinetic energy. Now, fair enough. If we accept that, then the claim then becomes that we've got molecules that are going slower. Now, we could demonstrate that a slowing of molecules by just lowering the temperature. I'm confused as to why slower molecules mean they'll have random collisions at a slower rate, which means they congregate at the bottom.
Stop. I can tell you why. Stop. I can tell you why. Because you started that by disclaiming the begging the question fallacy that has to precede your example. So if we accept a downward bias, was your first opening gambit?
No, I'm saying no. So even if we're claiming that a downward bias is a net force applied, that what it does...
You just did the same thing!
No. let me get past it.
You just violated second law again.
I know I am. I'm just bear with.
Hold on. So now you're going to say, I know I'm begging the question, but if you can, quote, bear with me and beg the question with me. Yeah, Witsit tried this.
Yes. No. Yeah. What I'm trying to say is the net effect of this is a supposed reduction in the speed of the molecule. What I'm saying is that reduction in the speed of the molecule does not elucidate the then claimed cause that you get congregation. You've just got slow molecules.
Stop. The claimed cause of what? The effect you've made us assume occurs.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, we don't assume it.
Even if you allow the begging of the question and the net result of this begging the question, the result on the molecule doesn't result on the claim of pooling. Is the point I'm making?
Okay, so you're saying even if I beg the question, that they'll slow down with this description given by Bob. And ignoring elastic collisions, begging the question of a downward vector, you still don't have a homogeneous layer forming at the bottom of a bromine container if you leave it on the desk for a year.
Yeah, I'm Billy the bromine molecule, right? And I'm there. I'm flying around my cylinder, and for whatever reason, reduction in temperature or a force that takes away my speed. Yeah, I'm flying around now. At the moment, I'm going around at 10 miles an hour, and I hit the top, and then I ping off to the side, and I ping off to the other side. Eventually, I hit the bottom, I ping around. Now I'm doing that at 10 miles an hour. Now I'm doing it at 5 miles an hour. What's the difference in terms of the probability of where I hit when I hit it?
Gotcha. It's the same. Okay, I gotcha. I gotcha.
All I'm going to do is generate less pressure because I'm going slower. So my number of collisions is reduced because I'm traveling slower. That's the only difference. Where I end up is just as probable to the randomness of the collisions.
Gotcha. So it's akin to saying as you went up higher.
Hey, Nathan, don't close out. I want to add something. I'll be back in a couple minutes.
No, I'm closing out right now. Do you want to add it now?
Bitch.
Don't swear.
Nah, I gotta go get breakfast. Oh, this is all Dunning-Kruger nonsense anyway. First of all, you got the container now. The collision, the elastic collisions between the molecules, those are elastic. There's no net loss of energy. But you got to understand the boundary conditions also, which you're not forgetting. Now, this is a red herring fallacy because you're inside the container. Now, the molecules hitting the walls of the container are going to impart some energy to the container walls, right? Where are the container walls on the Earth? Number one. Like I said, number two, this is an incoherent red herring Dunning-Kruger fallacy, right? Yeah, I'll be out in a minute. How was I going to end this? You guys put the pressure on me. I'm tired of this, man. I want to relax.
Got 16 seconds.
Are you still with me?
Got 16 seconds to round out.
Yeah. So the kinetic energy of gases is not due to any frigging, well, what are they saying? Like conservation of momentum or something? What are they going to conjure up with that? That ain't going to work. You numpties. It's dependent on the temperature of the gas. Pounds, not you guys.
Well, I have a question. I know you're trying to run it, but I have to have a question. One of the things I brought up, John, was that the temperature is the vibration rate of the molecule. But will reducing the temperature reduce the velocity and direction, or the directional velocity of the particle? Do you understand the nature of my question?
I think he's legged it to breakfast as soon as he made out his point. But yeah, it'll slow it down, is what you're asking, right? Will it slow it down? Yeah, it'll slow it down. That's what it's doing.
So it will slow down the direction and velocity of the particle. The vibrational rate, when it reduces, will slow down the direction and velocity of the particle. So how does it do that?
They don't vibrate. I did a quick look up on that. Vibration tends to be more within lattice structures that any ingested energy translates as vibrational energy. Within gases, very little change in vibrational energy of the molecule. It's mostly translated any inputted energy as kinetic.
Right, so if you imagine those three different states that QE has in those little circles, when it's trying to fly off, i.e. it's part of a liquid with a weak bond, it's vibrating because it's trying to fly off. But once it's changed state into a gas, it just flies in the direction it's flying in until it hits something. It's not vibrating anymore, is what you're saying, right?
Well, here's my question then. Once that particle leaves the container, it's got all that kinetic energy. You're saying that, but as the temperature of that particle reduces, the velocity of that particle reduces.
Yes.
Even though it's not colliding with anything.
Yeah, it's still flying at a slightly lower speed in all directions. And as you go higher and there's less of them, i.e. there's less to smack on the walls of the container, that will also in turn reduce the pressure, the amount and speed and velocity. Those all have a bearing on the amount of pressure.
Okay, I think my point. I don't know if my point's been made. I'm talking about if it's not in a contained system, that particles left the system. It's not colliding with anything. It's not in contact with anything, but the temperature of it is reduced because the vibrational rate is reducing. You're saying the speed of that and its directional velocity is also reducing.
Yeah, but you can't qualify that in terms of the difference it would make to the pressure because it's never going to collide with anything. But you're talking about a circumstance where you have no containment, i.e. just expands in all directions and never hits anything ever?
Right. See that. Okay. Of course, Lily is screaming. It's the. I just don't want to. Lily, I'm talking. Okay. If you don't stop, I'm gonna put you in timeout, please.
Go on, Paul. Just feel free. The screaming
I'm sorry.
we can cope with.
But I just don't want to. I mean, if you use the molecular theory, that energy or that velocity or whatever conservation momentum, if you want to call it that, has to go somewhere. Where is it going?
I thought you were closing out.
I don't get what you're saying, man. You're saying theoretically, if the particle just could continue on unimpeded, would it slow down? If that's the question, then I'd say no.
Well, that's the question. So that's what you have to say. If they say
but it's a very theoretical question. It's testable, isn't it? It requires the vacuum of space.
Well, that's what I was going. That was where I was going, Adam. Exactly. So what I was going to say to you next, Paul, was where would you give this example, or how would you give this example in reality? Because you would require a circumstance that has no containment. Well, other than the assumption of a sky vacuum, which is violated by the second law of thermodynamics, then how are you going to make the example where a particle just dissipates out from wherever it came, and then just carries on indefinitely? And you're saying if that happens, what happens to its speed? Well, Adam's saying no, well, it wouldn't slow down. But in terms of as something's being cooled in your first example, Adam, what does that manifest as in terms of a loss of energy? Well, how would that manifest?
Now we just revert to PV equals nRT. So that basically you've got a reduction in the speed of the molecule, which translates as a reduction in pressure, wouldn't it? So if you think about a balloon and you blow it up and then you cool it significantly, it will shrink.
Sure, but what I'm trying to get, yeah, I agree. And what I'm trying to say to Paul is, without the qualifier, the pressure bit, how do you qualify it? Well, Adam said, well, he slipped it in anyway. He said the change in the speed, right? But that's qualifiable by the amount of pressure on the containment. So that's how you qualify it. But if you've got your example where there's no containment, you can't qualify it.
I got you. And see, I think too, once you lose that vibrational kinetic energy, the bonds start taking over, right? The bonds of the molecules. Would you agree? What causes it to form a gas and liquid?
Well, that's directly proportional to temperature. If you take the example of water, right, you're saying it'll condense. It'll form weak bonds and turn into liquid.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Phase change.
I'm done. I'm still getting screamed at. I'm done.
Did you want to add something, QE? Because I have kept the. I'm not going to round out on a nice and even time by the looks of things.
You're still on, and
yes.
So man, you made me hurry up. Now I'm relaxing, eating. Now you want me to close out?
No. I'm saying I might keep the show open for another 8 minutes.
Yeah, right back what I was saying. I know, like I said, this is an incoherent Dunning-Kruger red herring fallacy, but in the no pun intended, the boundaries, right? Now, the elastic collisions between the gases, and Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, which I'm not. The collisions between the molecules, they're elastic. However, when those gas molecules hit the boundary or hit the barrier, it will impart some of its energy to that barrier. And then that barrier, what that's connected to, whether it be an adiabatic wall, right? Or so this goes into quite some detail. And I don't think I need to go that far. What I'm saying here is it's an incoherent Dunning-Kruger red herring fallacy because they're talking about vacuum chambers and canisters and stuff. Where's the canister on the Earth? That ends it right there. I don't know. Maybe, am I missing something?
Of some kind.
Am I missing something?
Yeah, we're in a container of some kind, aren't we?
No, stop,
John.
No.
You've
hold on, Adam. No, that's not what he said. He said, "Where's the canister around Earth?" That's what he specifically said. You're going to compare Earth to a spray can, an aerosol can, right? Then we need to be comparable in nature, and we're not. Now, does that mean we're saying suddenly that there is no containment? No, there absolutely must be containment. But is that comparable to a canister?
To make it comparable is to make it the whole of creation, and your canister, you'd have to be a bit like when Zach did his experiment where we showed differential in gas pressure. You'd have to be running around with your blowtorch being the sun, which is the big stirring rod in your already dynamic system, which is adding energy to those molecules, which is making them behave dynamically and differently as you agitate them. Now, John made the point about the sides of the wall. Maybe there is that, maybe there isn't, but there's such a big other influence that we don't even see that at the top end. We see the effects of the container on the ground. We see condensation happening. We see water vapor coming off. We can see those things. Yes, if you want to get into the detail, of course the containment has to play a role. It's the thing that generates the pressure, and there is some movement of kinetic energy, but in a much bigger reality, when we're trying to figure out the natural world, we have a much bigger input in terms of the dynamicness of the system. So any supposed concern with regards to kinetic energy loss through temperature transference is massively negated by the dynamic system and the input that we have from the sun.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. That's not what I'm saying. I was just inside their canister, which is what, 3 inches in diameter. I understand. It doesn't have anything to do with it, right? If we're talking about the Earth and its container, which is massive, right, and far, we don't even know where it is, right? However, the sun's inside heating everything up, so it's not only negligible. That's why I said it's a incoherent red herring fallacy, Dunning-Kruger type. Got it?
The only bit I'd add, John, is if that canister was in a temperature-controlled room and the gas inside was at the same temperature as the canister and we kept the room the same temperature, then those gas molecules keep moving at the same speed.
That's true. That's correct.
Which follows a normal distribution. They're not all going the same speed, by the way. It follows a normal distribution. It's the square of the sum of it. They're not, because it's totally interactive. Yeah, it is an approximation. I'm pretty sure it's a normal distribution.
It's a statistical. It's a statistical thing.
Again, yeah.
But further to that, Adam's point when you sloped off to breakfast, I think, was that you've got no instance, even in that controlled circumstance, where you have a layer forming.
Where are we talking about?
Gas.
No, where?
In a canister, regardless if you scale
in
it
one
up
of those small canisters, right? Yeah. So, like I said, it's incoherent red herring. It's simple as that.
Okie dokie. I think I will that to round out on. So with that, I'll say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and Google panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. Be sure to check out nathanoakley.com and the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.